really excited about this next presentation because what you're about to see and what we are doing in terms of public outreach and public involvement, public participation is unlike anything I've seen here since I arrived in 2015. And we're just incredibly proud of the work that Quan and Matt are leading in this regard. So I'm stepping out of the way and letting the dynamic team here take the lead on this overview. So Quan, Matt, on to you.
Appreciate it. So again, for our virtual friends, I'm Quan McLaurin. I am with the HRTPO, HRPDC, and I'm our Title VI and Civil Rights Liaison, as well as handling our DEI programs here. I'm joined here with Matt Klepeyes, who joined partway through the presentation, who is our communications administrator. This meeting is being recorded. And if everyone in the room could just remember, I know I said it like a million times yesterday, so please forgive me. Just speak up so that we can make sure that we don't encounter any audio issues for our friends online. All right, so today we're talking about our public participation plan and public outreach. So public outreach, it's vital to the planning process. As we talked about earlier, you can look at this map behind you made by our wonderful Sarah in our planning and economics department. We cover a vast region with a diverse range of people, of needs, of different community styles, and it's 1.8 million people. I mean, that can't be understated. Virginia Beach is the largest locality population-wise within the Commonwealth of Virginia at over 400,000 people. That's nothing to, sneeze at. So how do we coordinate and how do we make sure that we're accurately reaching or appropriately reaching out to such a vast region, such a vast area with such diverse needs? We also know that historically, as mentioned previously, disadvantaged communities have been disenfranchised and kept out of the planning process, or maybe not engaged as much with the planning process. Again, reference back to redlining communities, what we see now with heat areas within different urban areas where you have more concentration of those disadvantaged communities or populations. We know the impacts of bisected communities. And so we have a responsibility, right? When we know better, we do better, right? And so knowing the importance of reaching out, we've really tried to centralize that in our outreach. Again, that's that picture from when we had our Transit Day of Advocacy down there in Norfolk. It was really a wonderful day. We had our RTAP members come out and really experience transportation and understand firsthand what are the experiences of our transit users. Additionally, they got a chance to speak with our transit operators, which is invaluable. Again, it's always one thing to write about something, to talk about something. It's a whole other thing to experience it. It's a whole other thing to talk to the people who are utilizing the services, who are operating the services. And it showed a great day of collaboration between us as the MPO and HRT as one of the major transit providers, along with WADA and with Suffolk Transit. So some of our public involvement goals that have been outlined, we want to build trust and credibility. Trust is important to any relationship, to personal relationships, to professional relationships, and even to community relationships. And making sure that we reach out to the community that, we are serving, and that with each interaction, we're trying to build additional trust. We want it to be meaningful. We don't like to waste people's time. To even get people, anyone here who's ever run a public meeting knows that to get people to a public meeting is sometimes a task. So when people do show up and they share their time with us, we want to make sure that we're not wasting it and that we are being meaningful in that effort. We're collaborative. We really try to reach out to a lot of different organizations, community-based organizations, neighborhoods, community members, and get a varying perspectives and input. But we also try to ask, how can we collaborate with you? A great example of that is actually shortly after I started, one of our CAC members, Zakia Cunningham, was the assistant director, I believe at the time, for the YWCA. And we had like a natural counterpart and collaborative relationship because she ran a lot of the equity work for the YWCA. They run an annual conference, the REST conference during June, in alignment with Juneteenth. And so we presented there through that collaboration. And, you know, it was great to see that the people who were there, who were coming to talk about equity, when they saw the different products that we had out, that's before we even got, you know, the upgraded outreach materials, they saw our regional legislation agenda, and they were like, oh, I want to know more about that. They saw our economic monthly, and they were inquiring about that and trying to figure out how they can get more connected to our different materials. Like mentioned before, when we're talking about transportation planning, we're talking about more than just the roads, the bridges, the active transportation. We're talking about the impacts of transportation and all that goes into planning. Additionally, we want it to be inclusive. That means also making it timely and digestible. We need to use terms that our public understands. We need to use terms that are engaging for them. Everyday people don't want to go through an entire course just to learn what we do. They want it to be digestible, easy to understand, and understand how they can then engage in that process. Exceed. We don't, you know, aim to just meet federal requirements and state requirements. We aim to exceed those requirements and continue to push ourselves in the ways that we can and where appropriate. Transparent. We facilitate a transparent and flexible public process. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit, but we live stream all of our public meetings, or most of our public meetings where technology does allow. For meetings that we can't live stream, we do try to record them and make sure that those are posted afterwards. And if we can't record or live stream them, we do make sure to put out whatever materials we can related to those public meetings, whether that be by social media, on our website, or otherwise, to ensure that our community members know what is going on here. Equitable. We collaborate with traditionally underserved populations to understand their needs as it relates to planning. So that means partnering with the Urban League. One of the things that we had the chance to do and work with them on back in 2023 was on a regional Juneteenth calendar, and looking at the different Juneteenth events that were going on around the region and partnering with those different community leaders. Partnering with United Way, YWCA, NAACP, the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, making sure that we're connecting with the different sectors of our region and getting those varied perspectives and constantly asking ourselves, which leads into number 8, evaluating how can we do better? How can we reach more people? How can we make ourselves more accessible? How can we make things more digestible? How can we be more understood? A great example of that was last night. We heard from Max Lichtenstein. I never met Max, didn't know who Max was, but Max says, okay, you know, and promise Dale, this is not a shot, but Max is like, I don't understand, you know, what Max was referring to as long range planning. And even though he didn't know the exact terminology, we understood, and we were able to engage with Max and say, okay, well, how can we be more accessible? How can we present this information in a way and provide it to you in a way that people like you who are running in your circles are able to gain that knowledge, that information, and participate in that process? Because when we plan, we're not just planning for today. We're planning for decades ahead, and we're creating generational impacts. The very legislation that we saw President Biden put in place in the executive orders and the work of this Congress during these last 4 years to address historical inequities were caused by people who maybe intentionally or unintentionally we're planning communities for the future that were exclusive, right? And that didn't consider the needs of everyone. So today, when we're planning, we have to think about how are we making sure that we're not participating in that same process? How do we make sure that we're not repeating those same cycles? So a closer look at our public involvement process, and understand that this isn't exhaustive. These are just some key highlights that I wanted to pull out as far as administrative process. So at least 30 days full review for our long range transport, or full updates for our long range transportation plan and to our transportation improvement program, also known as the LRTP and the TIP. At least 14 days for TIP project list updates, for LRTP and TIP amendments, and for regional conformity assessment. At least 14 days for special studies, and at least 45 days for public participation plans or Title VI LEP plans. So what methods are we using, right? So we're using, some of these are going to sound, maybe very familiar in the traditional section, but then we also have some really exciting engagement methods that we're doing on the horizon. Before I jump right into that, this is one of our community partners that we connected with from the League of Advocates. Again, one of those violence interrupters who came here, right, actually in this room, you can see the picture right there, to talk to us about violence and crime prevention within the Hampton Roads region. Again, when we're planning, it's more than just roads. It's more than just a traditional idea of planning. It's understanding that this is interconnected, that transportation is a social determinant of health, that it impacts who we are, and making sure that we're connecting with our community partners. So we have public notices, our newspaper, our surveys, our public meetings, RAC cards, as you can see out here, news media. Keith is no stranger to having a regular interview with our local media and his favorite interviewer, don't worry, I won't name him. And then information distribution to public spaces, going out to libraries, right? That's one of the great unifiers for communities, where in one of the public buildings and municipal buildings that you see across the nation that are used by varying levels of backgrounds and socioeconomic status. So libraries are a great place to reach out to people. When we were at the Kiwanis Club a couple months ago, sorry, time blurs, but when we were there, we got a chance to meet with the Norfolk head of their library system and talk about how we can integrate our information into Norfolk libraries. As a quick plug, as a Norfolk resident, I do think that we have some of the best libraries within the region. No shade to any of our other locality partners. Sorry, anybody listening. But I take pride in our libraries that we have there. If you've not been yet, go to the Slover Library. It's pretty wonderful. Digital, we have social media. We have Facebook, YouTube, Nextdoor, LinkedIn, Instagram. We don't have TikTok. I know people keep asking about it. We can't do TikTok. Sorry, we got to move on from that one. We are trying to build relationships to where we don't even, have to ask sometimes for radio, TV, or podcasters to include our information. We're getting earned media, where they're picking up on what we're doing and wanting to include it in their programming. We have our website, Civic Alerts. We have our in-person and community partners. As you saw out there, we have a table that we will take with us and go to different events, and we'll set up at different places to engage the public on a varying array of our programs that we have to offer. Public working groups, our FTAC, CAC, RTAP, HRDB, the Regional Connectors Studies Symposium, Cap to Cap. I had the great opportunity to go to our Virginia Environmental Justice Council meeting back in April. They met actually in Portsmouth. And this is the Environmental Justice Council for all of Virginia. And they were discussing EJ concerns right here in Hampton Roads. And so obviously as an MPO, we needed to be there, right? We needed to hear what are our residents here in the Tidewater region saying that they're experiencing. We heard concerns from a historically Black neighborhood, Hughesville. Many of you may have heard of them, about recurrent flooding issues. they actually had already submitted a Title VI complaint to Federal Highway about the issues that they were having with recurrent flooding. That was dismissed for them, but they're still having those issues. And so we've been trying to connect and get with those communities. I got a chance to meet with Ms. Carolyn White and talk about, like, what are you experiencing? From those conversations, Bob and I were able to connect with Al Moore out in Suffolk and talk about, hey, can you connect more with this community member? I know you've already talked to them. I know that they've been at public meetings before, but they're still experiencing these issues. And while this is technically not part of our purview, as it's not a regionally significant project, and it's not an area that we have jurisdiction on, they're still a member of our regional community, and we want to provide them and connect them with the support and resources that they need. So we connected them with VDOT. We connected them again with their local representatives to try to get them the support that they need. On the horizon, you heard yesterday from Dale about the virtual engagement spaces that we have that are on the horizon, such as the LRTP Metaverse. So these are some highlights from different outreach and just engagement that we've done with the community. Again, Transit Advocacy Day. We have Pride in the Peak. That was a really fun day. We went over to Summit Point where we had interactions with a great cross section of not just the Chesapeake community, but also people who were coming in from the border near North Carolina, people who were coming in from some of our more rural areas of Chesapeake, of Suffolk, to experience a Pride event here in Chesapeake, something that Hampton Roads Pride, which we've also partnered with on different efforts and had tabling opportunities with. Something that they've been trying to do is move out of Norfolk when they do their summertime Pride events and move across the region. Well, when they're doing that, why not us also go and connect with the community members that are there? And you'd be surprised how many people were like, what? Oh my goodness, I didn't know that you had a come home program. And these just flew off the shelves because what do we know? Housing instability is something that is a concern for most of America right now, right? It's not just Hampton Roads. And people want to know, how do I get stable shelter? And we know that that is so closely connected with good regional planning. We took the CAC up to the American Theater, the historic American Theater in Hampton, in the historic Phoebus neighborhood. We spoke at the WTS Advancing Women in Transportation DEI panel, where we're connecting with other DEI professionals, women within the transportation and planning industry. Cap to cap, we're connecting with our active transportation. Yesterday, we heard so much about active transportation and how fired up our residents are and our community members are about Trail 757 and about planning more active transportation options. And so what we heard from people who came not just from our region, but from Richmond, is that they're also excited. And we had, I know this is a no-no to use like documents that have full branding, but we had the what is now Trail 757 map, where they can look at, okay, well, what parts of this project are funded? What parts of these projects are under design? Kind of like what you were mentioning yesterday, Professor, so that they could flip through and they could see for themselves, okay, we can have a regional trail system. It is in development, and where are we at along in that process? We went to the Resilience Lab. Again, this is one of the first buildings, facilities within a sentence for clarity and conciseness. Here's now Google. So we went to the Resilience Lab, where they are one of the first facilities in the nation that is built to have the environment reclaim it based on estimates of sea level rise. And so the CAC got a chance to not just hear about some of the climate issues that are facing our region, as a region that is heavily reliant, on our Atlantic Ocean, on our Chesapeake Bay, on the James River, on the Elizabeth River, but to also see, like, what are we doing to try to plan for a future, right? doing some rural outreach in Southampton and Cortland at the library for the LRTP. One of the things that we did with the CAC is we took them around to every single staff member within this building during a CAC member to meet with each professional in their respective area to have a conversation and introduction and also be able to ask questions. As a CAC member, we want to make sure that they're informed and that they have some insight about what's going on here. You can see right here, this is actually John Mahaley. Looking good, John. Speaking to our CAC members, they said that this was one of their favorite meetings because they got a chance to ask more in-depth questions about items that they maybe would have been nervous to ask about in a setting where they're getting a briefing. They have the opportunity one-on-one to speak with our different professionals within the building. We also went to the historic Addicts Theater, named after Christopher Addicts, and had a chance for the CAC to get a tour of the Addicts Theater. We, of course, went over our normal agenda items during all of these events and different meeting places that we went to, but they also got a chance to learn about the history of this region and what makes us Hampton Roads and what informs how we plan and move forward for the future. Again, Transit Advocacy Day. For the RCS, we did outreach across the region at different libraries. We did some at VDOT Suffolk. We had young professionals that have come into our building and met with our board and got a chance to really understand what it is that we're doing and also tell us from their perspective, why is it that we're having an out-migration issue right now? Why are young professionals leaving Hampton Roads and wanting to go to the glitz and glamour of DC or go to Charlotte or go to Raleigh? What can we do to keep them here? What do they need for their future? And getting their perspective. As you heard about the Long Range Transportation Plan board meeting, that was a chance for us to have these maps out on the table and to have our members of the board look at what we're doing to plan for the future. Again, RTAP is another way that we're able to connect with our community. Transit Advocacy Day in Richmond, where our executive director, along with some of our deputy executive directors, go up to Richmond and advocate for better transportation planning and opportunities here. And then also one of my favorites, because food is involved and everyone who knows me knows I love food, farmers market outreach. So we go over here to the Chesapeake farmers market and we meet people on Wednesday mornings periodically and we ask, okay, do you know about this? Are you aware of this? We had, this picture, it may be in another one. But we had a really great conversation with one of our younger members of the public who comes up to our table and says that he wants to be an engineer when he grows up, right? And little did he know he was speaking to two engineers right there. And it was just such a fun and engaging conversation, and to see someone so young lit up and excited to go into this field was really a wonderful experience. So I'll actually turn it over to you, Matt.
I could just ask, these outreach efforts, what's the course of time with the time range?
Yeah, so most of those events that are on there are events that were done since I came here in 2023.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can tell because the higher end pictures are the ones I took.
As in, right, this was over the course of 4 years or?
Yeah, these are
1
the
year.
past couple.
That's great.
At least. So speaking of pretty significant changes, I think you guys have noticed the new branding that's appeared all around the building. One of the biggest pieces of that was our website. You can look at what our old homepage looked like for the HRTPO. I think I speak for the entire public when I say, wow, that's so easy and accessible. No? I'm not sure what's difficult about 3 different levels of menus and forward expanding, accordion pieces, and latest news and upcoming meetings all crammed right there in the first thing you see. We took that very seriously. It was one of the challenges that we had. I'm really proud to say that we actually contracted with a new organization. We've got a much cleaner review on the website. All of our content has been reviewed for accessibility. It's been brought over. It's been screen reader checked and approved, which is a really important thing. And you can see that it's just significantly more navigable now. I think we just needed to take a holistic look at kind of what our content was, how we were communicating, and how to improve that. Just some
one item related to the documents, when there is this screening for readability, is being mindful of once documents are uploaded, let's say minutes, anything that has a signature, sometimes that's put in as a picture and then it's not. So just, and that's something with other MPOs as they struggle with websites, great, other planning documents, but anything with that signature, new minutes, that's something where could be room for improvement.
Okay, I'll take a look at that and make sure that we're watching it. Just some quick stats about the website. From April 2022 to 2023, 200,000 views, 63,000 users in some of those top pages. Just since March, which is when we launched, we're at 158,000 views and 53,000 users. So you can see we're on track to absolutely blow by what our previous views and users were, and I attribute that in part to an increased SEO, but also just a much cleaner appearance and easier navigation. I mentioned earlier some of the accessibility pieces. The Audio Eye implementation is one of my favorites. I'll actually show you what it pulls up if you're unfamiliar with the technology, but it's also screen reader approved content. We've had somebody go through and just check the accessibility and all of those things. I mentioned Audio Eye. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, so let me go back. I don't know if it's not on this one.
Who's the person that reviewed? You said someone reviewed?
So it's actually Civic Plus. When they brought all of their stuff over, our stuff over, they check everything against their accessibility calculator. And then beyond that, when we add new content, there's an accessibility checker feature within all of our content that we run before we hit publish. So if you look here in the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that's what Audio Eye is. When you click the little accessibility character, you can change everything from the focus, cursor, highlight, contrast, color shift, animation, text size, font spacing, anything that you might need to be able to improve the functionality of the website. It's all built in to the site. Talking about some of our success stories from social media. Our Facebook pages have seen a pretty significant increase. January 1 through December 31, 2020, we had literal single-digit impressions reached and likes. For an entire calendar year, we had 8 impressions, which is, I'm going to be honest, I'm flabbergasted by. So, 41,426 impressions feels pretty staggering comparatively. I'd like to see that number improve, but I think that that's a pretty good look at where we're at. We've also expanded our LinkedIn profiles, 510 total followers, 7,053 impressions. Those are growing, but we're focusing on staff accomplishments. One of the recent posts we had was actually our guy Kyle, who was recently achieved his AICP. He's one of our. Hi, we're kidding, Kyle. See, got your back. Yeah, so it was great. It's been a really good opportunity for us to kind of connect on a professional level, and I think that you're all familiar with LinkedIn.
Are you finding those increases with more posts, or what is?
So what we're doing is we're posting more consistently. We're posting using an audience building technique. So it's really it's about consistency, it's about quality, and it's about engagement, right? So utilizing those three tenets, what we're doing is we're finding content that's working. We're engaging across our MPO, and so we're working with all of our other partner organizations on those social media accounts. We're helping amplify their messaging, but we're also interacting with theirs, which builds our profiles. And so the one of our newer ones is Nextdoor. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I go back a second?
Sure.
So I know we received commendations in the review in 2020, but I think what this tells you is going above and beyond. We just don't want to check the box, as Juan pointed out. And while we received commendations with impressions of 8 and 16, I think what you're seeing is our commitment to go above that. And again, Matt, just exceptional work that, it's the engagement that we just never have seen before that is out there that's so significant. So thank you.
So I've mentioned Nextdoor, and actually I think it was mentioned yesterday during one of our essential services surveys. So what I really, really love about Nextdoor is we've worked to establish an agency page with them, and that agency account, which I'm sure you're familiar with, allows us to share with all of the members of the MPO, and specifically the region. We worked with Nextdoor, Joseph, is our account manager there, to kind of draw the boundary appropriately, to identify all of the relevant locations. And what's great about Nextdoor is we can get hyper segmented, so I can go to very specific neighborhoods, locations, things like that. Sharnita is aware, some of her work is only relevant to Chesapeake, for instance. It's fantastic. But we can also do kind of that macro level. And so we've enjoyed the ability to kind of shift between those and target our messages, but also back up.
And going back to that Nextdoor, that's something I've heard of, not as familiar with, and probably the first, social media tool I've read an MPO using, or the first MPO I've read using that tool. Regarding the members, are those individuals that have a Nextdoor account that are?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's
It's
a high number.
It's significant, and that's what's so great about it is, with Facebook and LinkedIn, there's an audience building, right? I have to cultivate those users. With this, they're there. By virtue of existing within our boundaries, I have access to communicate with them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm communicating with every one of them all of the time. I'm usually averaging between 50,000 and 80,000 impressions, but if you think about the financial cost of that on Facebook, that's a pretty tremendous savings. And it's a different audience from what I've seen. The Nextdoor audience is
Yes, because I am a member and we engage our subdivision, and we try to encourage them to get on Nextdoor just for general information. But I love when I see HRTPO, PDC information pop up on my phone. And so my neighbors, so I'm getting the message and we've encouraged them to become members. They're getting the message. So, we, continue to applaud and know that we use Nextdoor as well. And so it is a really great tool to get to kind of like the grassroots, people that typically would not get this kind of information. You can get it. So.
And it's really sparked some great conversations about the work we do and why we do it, and how decisions are made and things like that. So it's a challenge sometimes, but I've enjoyed that.
So are those use different outreach methods when engaging for Nextdoor versus?
I do, yeah. I try to be really careful about Nextdoor, because Nextdoor in my mind is a privilege to be able to communicate to the entire region. And so they're not necessarily subscribing because they want my content, they're subscribing because they have to.
It's an automatic subscription, here's where I live, oh, I'm gonna get HRTPOs.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I try to be cognizant of that, and really only share opportunities that are going to be truly beneficial for public input, things like that. I know that, I try to be very careful of that, mindful.
If I may, Matt, I guess what's maybe not said in that as well is that, because if you post too much and it's information that they don't find to be meaningful, engaging, we don't want to get blocked, you know?
Well, it awakens the trust that Juan discussed earlier, right? We want to build trust that we're a reputable partner. Spamming them is not the way to do that.
If I can chime in, that's where the internal engagement comes in. Juan and Matt will work with each program department and say, hey, what are you looking for? And maybe it's next door, maybe it's not next door. So that's also making sure the conversations internally to have what is it you're looking for. So the essential services poll, we felt John's team was leading that effort. So they sat down and said, is this the way? Maybe we'll try this. So again, that's where the internal coordination and collaboration comes in. And I think you'll see that with people.
Great, thank you.
So just some of the public involvement highlights from the short period of time. Oh, there we go.
That's
There's
the
the photo.
That's our little guy.
Yeah. That was our little engineer.
He likes
was-
Legos and he wanted to be an engineer.
He was awesome. So just brief outreach highlights. I know Dale mentioned, over 1,500 participants in the scenario planning survey, over 600 participants in the priority survey, almost 1,500 in the safety survey. It was, a multi-pronged effort, not just paid advertisement, but also earned media. So we had them out doing interviews, working with the reporters. And then we've received in-person feedback as well. Some of those young professional conversations that we've had, things like rail, increased connectivity, more public transit, resiliency planning, rural connectivity to urban centers are kind of ongoing themes that were noted. To Juan's point, we want to make new and deeper connections. So the Virginia Council on Environmental Justice, which he attended, the Elizabeth River Project, we were fortunate to go to with the CDC. Virginia Department of Public Health is a pretty significant partner opportunity, the Kiwanis Club, young professionals of Hampton Roads and our local universities. And then just as an aside, the public information presentations that we've done since from 2020 to 2024, it's over 478 in-person public information
And
presentations.
as a quick comment, I'm so sorry. That number 478 is actually as of I'd say maybe 2 months ago. And we've done additional ones 2 or 3 months ago, so.
It's probably close
That's the
to,
amount of presentations given?
yes.
In person, so that includes every time that someone from this building goes out into the public and presents in the community or presents to an organization, shows up to a civic league, when they,
Those were
maybe ask,
presentations.
and ask to come here. So that's a lot of,
We have really
Yeah.
fantastic staff and they're doing really fantastic work and that work is getting out into the public. This presentation was a whole lot about Juan and I, and it shouldn't have been. Truly, the team members that are around the table are the ones that are going out and being those subject matter experts. And so they're the ones that have just been stellar.
And Juan, how many additional meetings you said happened in the last 2 months?
I can't be for certain.
Number that you said.
Yeah, I said between probably last 3 months, I would say at least 15 plus, but I think that's undershooting it. But I'm just gonna be conservative and say 15 plus, but there's likely more than that.
That's really all we had. Of all of the things, there's always going to be other options, other things that we're doing, other ways that we're exploring. One of the new things we've done is we've taken our after action reports, which were previously a fairly dense written document. We've actually converted it to constant contact, which is an email Yeah. So we do a video now to make it a little bit more accessible. We also highlight the presentations, ways that people can get involved. We're just looking for ways to kind of consistently reinforce that the planning work we do is and should be out in the open, and there are ways for you to participate. One thing Juan didn't mention is arguably the most popular, that's kind of a joke, Facebook post that I put up is every single Monday I do our meeting Monday. Every single Monday. It's something I started like the day I got here. So for at least the past 2 years, every single Monday we've got a couple weeks worth of meetings that go up on Facebook. That way people can see, here's what we're doing, here's where you can get involved. It's date, time, location, and then the name of the meeting.
You don't need to spell it like.
That's the hope, certainly. Yeah, so
Matt, this is a little bit of a curveball. Is there any chance we could play for the federal team or a joint TPO and PDC video, or is that going to be that tough?
Yeah,
are you able to do that?
is it on our YouTube, right?
Well, they do that. If I may interject, I just want to give props and acknowledgement to Quan and Matt. And you have sitting around the table, Sharnita from the PDC and Greg, you have all the TPO principals, and this is a village, right? And I just credit to them and the principals. They work together, all the staff, getting the message out. We've never had this type of a collaborative network, and I just welcome any comments people might have about it.
If you give me 2 seconds, I got the video and I'm just gonna put it
Well,
up.
Quan is queuing that really quick. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying, push.
Okay, while he's doing that, I'd just like to say that working with the communications team and with Quan has been a breath of fresh air for our program. My Housing and Human Services program has always had the lens of equity and diversity by the nature that we're working one-on-one with low to moderate income clients in this region. So all of what we have done in the past has been in the community, but adding Matt and Quan has been really beneficial to us internally because not only are they monitoring the activities that we're doing, but they're actually partners. And that's something that we had not had on the team before, that if it's some way that they need to add, it's a value add with them, that they come into the meetings, not just in terms of compliance, but they're a part of the conversations, which has been an eyeful. In fact, Quan has almost taken a couple of my committees because when they see him coming, they're like, Quan's here to kind of add in. So it's really helped us when we go into.
Don't worry, Sharnita, I'm busy enough.
Okay, all right. Well, they keep asking when I'm bringing you back. So that's been the ad for us in working with the communications piece. Is really able to really cater our message to wherever those communities are. So I think that has been a value add to our team that we did not have in the past. And I'm glad to have them on the team because if they can't find the answers, they have the community input and the drive because sometimes we can't keep up with Quan because he's out there a lot. So it's really made our job of getting the message out to the right people. When you're dealing with a local government, we don't have marketing dollars. We just don't. Most of my monitoring comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they want the money to the clients. They don't want money in terms of marketing. So by using these creative approaches, it's really allowed us to continue to get things down to the ground level so that the clients and the people that we serve are, impacted and have the information. So I just want to say kudos to having a team that really works within the programs.
Just to quickly piggyback off what Sharnita said, Queen joined the staff, and so I think you had a fun day in this room, just kind of being blasted with the depth and the breadth of things that happen in this building. And one thing that, to Sharnita's point, we have a whole bunch of program areas and not one of them does the same thing as another, right? And so the outreach that Sharnita does with Housing and Human Services is very different than behind the scenes coordination in EM or even federal and state policy exchanges and water resources. And this is where, when you come in with Matt and Juan, you can't have a one size fits all approach. you need an individual approach, and that's what they provide. And to that breath of fresh air, having a let me find the shoe that fits approach to your program so that we know who we're trying to interact with and how we interact is so improved in this organization. So again, kudos to them, but that's really, I mean, you'll get a little flavor of it here, but we just do so many different things for so many groups that it's hard to come in and say, let's take this template and press it on everybody. You can't do that. We all want our unique template, so that's what they're stuck trying to get.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Greg. Could be back. You might have a question.
first?
You'll
Juan
have
needs to be
to,
unmuted,
I, yeah, oh,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
I think, right? Maybe back up.
No, oh, wow. Okay. How do I-
Turn off your mic, Juan. Try. Our technology presentation will be at 12:30.
John will be leading that.
All right. Maybe some we can send out. My apologies.
It looks great.
I did see this video. I saw there were some member highlights from the CAC after the meeting. I think those are on YouTube. And even the after actions that Bob gives a summary of, and that's great to have. I don't know many MPOs that do that.
So the idea of this was to sit down and have a conversation with the public about what we do. And, you know, like for Sharnita to explain what she does in 5 seconds, or Greg or Dale is about impossible. But we got a lot of great feedback on this. And it just tries to show we're trying different things.
That's good.
So.
You'll also notice that staff are wearing, some branded things, and so that's part of that concern of that, making sure that we're, reinforcing who we are and.
Good.
Collaboration is not just what we say, it's what we do.
Because when 17 localities come together to advocate, share ideas, and pool resources,
big things happen in Hampton Roads.
There you go. Max,
Yeah. So I'll
Welcome to the regional building.
the home of the HRPDC and HRTPO.
This isn't your typical office building.
This is where Hampton Roads comes together.
To share ideas and plan for the future.
We work to build connections across this great region.
To tackle issues that cross local boundaries.
Like protecting water quality, emergency preparedness, and transportation infrastructure.
Our focus is on building more resilient communities, expanding access to broadband internet services,
And housing opportunities for all residents of Hampton Roads. We're a hub for data maps and information sharing.
And we empower residents to be environmental stewards of this place we all call home.
Whether it's congestion relief, passenger rail, or trails.
It's our job to make your trip as safe and efficient as possible. We keep transportation projects moving.
For freight planning to travel forecasting.
We're planning tomorrow's transportation system today.
And for all of our efforts, we evaluate, monitor, and keep the public engaged.
Collaboration is not just what we say, it's what we do.
Because when 17 localities come together to advocate, share ideas, and pool resources,
Big things happen in Hampton Roads.
Thanks, Marky.
Thank you, Mark.
So I have just a few quick questions. You all are doing some awesome work. I guess I'll start with internal and then kind of move more external to which is facing to the public. So internally, I keep hearing your two names come up. So if you all went on extended leave, do you all have documentation for all this awesome work and advocacy that you're doing with all these communities? Like, will the next person be able to pick that up and say, recreate this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So one of the things that we do to make sure that our outreach is that much more effective and that it's, again, meaningful is that rarely in those photos did you see that we went out there alone. We typically are tapping on the shoulders of the professionals of those respective areas to come along with us so that not only do the public have the experts right there within reach to be able to answer some of those questions, but additionally so that our staff here internally, no one's a stranger to public outreach. No one's afraid to go out. No one is unaware of what it's like to be at a table at a festival or at an event and engage with the public. And we try to make sure, one of the things that I've really tried to do with all of the products that I put out is I will send it out to the principals of the respective areas and make sure that not only is the information correct, but is this the way that we want the information presented to the public. And so making sure that they're engaged in that process along the way helps to ensure that everyone's familiar with it, and so that there is a bit of redundancy there.
Additionally, I have a staff of two, Joe Turner and Rob Cofield, who are very, very talented communicators in their own right, who work with me constantly. And so they're aware of kind of what strategies we take, why we take them, and then they help work backwards. So if for any reason I'm out, they're right there without question.
Mac, if I can add, each department and program principal or administrator is involved and takes outreach seriously. So we're right there with them, sharing ideas, figuring out different ways of what topics we want to share with who. So we're all there with them.
So in your slide, you had a slide about social media success stories. So this gets towards like the evaluating the effectiveness of your public involvement techniques. So it seems like you all, within the slide deck, you do a good job of evaluating a lot of your metrics. Is that anywhere public facing?
I don't have a public facing document, but I keep kind of monthly reports on what I'm doing, what we've done, where we're going. It's something that I learned early on in my career. And so I just like to kind of keep those rolling.
Well, and I guess I'll add, when we put out the 2023 Title VI Goals and Accomplishments, we didn't have some of that data, or we didn't explore some of that data fully. And so when we go into our next Goals and Accomplishments report, that's, public outreach highlights that we'll want to make sure are included in that document.
Yeah, it's like, the big part of, if we talk about this meaningful public involvement, that USDOT is trying to highlight, but even more so like, what's in our regulation about evaluating the effectiveness of public involvement, or just the public ask the question, how are you all making the public aware that you're effective? And, documentation always, but, you all are doing good work. You should be making the public aware of all the great work that you're doing. Like the increases engagement, that's a great thing for them to be able to see. I think kind of circling back to the previous section about Title VI non-discrimination, I think you all gave some dates of like February 2023. PDC got a corrective action on the PPP to update it. So I guess I'm wondering, was the participation plan updated? Because it looks like the date is 2019 or 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fair question. So the public participation plan, we've actually changed it, the naming over to a public engagement plan. It's currently under internal review. I have shared it with our partners over at VDOT Civil Rights Division to make sure that we have that technical eye on it as well. It'll likely be going to public comment at our October board meeting. And then from there, we'll have that 45-day period and it'll be adopted, or we hope that the board will adopt it afterwards. We're going to make a request for that.
And is that reflected in your work program as a final product?
As
The update of the public participation plan?
I believe that, or for FY24, or
Yeah, I'm looking at
25.
I'm looking at I guess I'm looking at your report where it says, I guess you met with VDOT. I'm just reading from your document. It said there was a renewed joint public participation plan between the MPO and the PDC will be created and submitted to VDOT for review before the quadrennial review. And that's what you have.
Yeah, I
You said
have
you had
it,
that.
right, and we've reviewed it, and
Okay. We didn't see that in the UPWP as a product in terms of updating that. And so what we were doing when we asked for the public participation plan, we were provided the 2018 version, not knowing that there was something being updated. And so I guess we're basing our review on something that we haven't seen. What's been shared with us, it looks like it hasn't been captured. In essence, the current public participation plan doesn't look like it has your fingerprints on it, or that it is your own. So it's good to know that it's being updated.
yeah, I
But
mean,
again, like I said, what was sent to us wasn't.
So let me clarify or help provide some clarity on that. So the one that we shared with you was the board adopted one. I wanted to make sure that we only shared documents with you that were officially adopted by the board. And since this document technically isn't out for public review yet, I didn't want to put anything in front of you that wasn't in that official process yet. We'd be more than happy to share it with you. That's no problem.
And Ivan, if I can chime in, and because we knew there's a lot of things moving to target here, and also a lot of things in place. That's why in our work program, we kind of said the language we use is update public participation documents such as the public participation plan as needed. And when you requested it, as Juan said, we wanted to make sure board approved one, which is still our current public participation plan because it lays out our public comment period, our methods of engagement. We knew it needs to be updated. That's why we added that language in there. And
Well,
so it'll be, yeah.
And if I may, Ivan, when we had a conversation a few months ago about the Title VI plan, you mentioned that when I provided you the draft, that you wanted the board adopted one. So I didn't want to make that same mistake again and provide you one that wasn't adopted by the board.
And that's fine. See, when we see the language about updating the participation plan as needed, then we look to the end product.
Mhm.
And so from an end product standpoint, we didn't see an adopted. Maybe it's in there.
This FY21 just started July
25.
1, so yeah, FY21, so wait, but our discarded items, I think, was earlier than that, Ivan, which is why we would have given you the 2018, because that is the official board-adopted public participation plan. But I can take another look to make sure the end products match, but we put that update just to make sure, we knew that was coming, but I'll make sure the end products match and take another look. But when the discarded items were requested, we did not have. Again, as Juan said, we wanted to give you what is officially adopted by the TPO board, which is the public.
And that's fine. I just want to, Mark, again, for the FY 2025 PWP that takes us through the next year.
Mhm.
We saw that, activities as needed work program, but in terms of end products, the expectation that I'm hearing is that you will have an end product before June of 2025. And so what I'm saying is, I didn't see that as an end product in your work program. And that would have led me to believe, okay, well, we're gonna have a work. And so it's all,
I
I'm
was
just,
just under the assumption
I
with
didn't
the
know.
previous communication that we had that you were included on, where you saw that we were working on the public participation plan, that you were also aware of that. Again, I understand our responsibility in that. We'll make sure to send you a copy of it.
And I'll make sure the work program
Yeah,
also, I'll take.
Yeah, because, and again, you're doing a lot of fantastic work. But the document that we received doesn't reflect what you actually are doing, all the good work that you do. In essence, it doesn't have your fingerprints on it. And that's what I was saying. And we looked at the UPW, people like, okay, well, the end product should reflect, we're gonna have something with your fingerprints on it by next year. And it sounds like we're gonna have that.
You have that.
We have it for the fourth quarter of.
You'll probably have it before we get our certification response.
And kind of wrapping up my questions, like around this, meaningful public involvement, ideas, incorporation of feedback from the public. So I guess I'm wondering, is that currently being done, or is that like part of the update where, as you always, so like, as a member of the public, we're all members of the public, when we make comments, how do you know that the comment is received? How do you know that the feedback was incorporated? They just throw it in the trash. So I guess that's the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So with
being transparent, like y'all mentioned, transparency.
Yeah, absolutely. So in our reports, anytime that we have public comments, we make sure to have in the final version a summary of those comments. When we're presenting to the board, we let them know, here's the feedback that we heard, here's how we incorporate it. As mentioned yesterday with look, I'm not gonna make a mistake again. I see you right here. With the improving passenger rail for Hampton Roads, that was a document that was already approved by the board, and that we hadn't received any comments on from the first time it went out in July to when it was adopted in October. When we heard public feedback and public comments, we went back, revised that document, and sent it back to represent it to the board, and then sent it back to the board for approval. And we made that clear in our process as well.
And if I can add to that, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I think you got the TV to pick up the report, and it was through the television that this woman in Texas found the report.
And in general, any of our report readers, our LRTP, right, they will have a section where they talk about public detail. I'll let you chime in. We do say these are comments received. This is how we respond.
Yeah, just some real examples with that, with our prioritization tool, when we were doing a holistic update of the tool, we received public comments for how new measures to look at or weights, and we brought that back into our committee, and so they can see in real time and actually have the public participate on how their comments were affecting the way we're evaluating our projects even moving forward. And then our candidate project portal, a public can submit candidate projects to us directly for us to evaluate for the LRTP, so they see their fingerprints all over our work.
Even in a less formalized manner, we get emails all the time, contact forms all the time, and that's part of the importance of those working relationships with our principals and our deputies, that they understand that when I send them an email, hey, I received this comment from the public, they respond almost immediately. It's really fantastic. And so, there's no public comments are coming and going into a black hole. They're getting a response, even if it's just an acknowledgement that, hey, we've received this, we're looking into it, and we'll be back in touch.
And because we understand that our planning isn't done in a vacuum, we also, where possible and appropriate, we support our planning partners and transit agency partners. Again, the public doesn't, not all members of the public understand the alphabet soup that is regional planning, right? HRPDC, HRTPO, HRTAC, HRTTF, on and on and on. But what they do understand is that we have the word transportation in our name. So when they have an issue with Hampton Roads Transit and they see Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, they naturally make that connection to us. So we actually field a lot of feedback from HRT, and we connect with William Harrell over at HRT, and with Noel Pinker, Alexis Majid over at HRT, to make sure that we get them that insight. As recent as, what was it, a month and a half ago maybe, We received input from a rider who had a not so pleasant experience at one of the bus state stations, transfer stations. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry. And we made sure to immediately get that over to HRT and make sure that we collaborate with them, because even though we don't run HRT and we don't run those services, we understand that for the public, that doesn't matter. They want good service and they want good experiences. And so we go that extra mile in that regard as well.
That's great that those messages are being directed to the right party. So yeah, thanks for doing that and not just saying, oh, that's not us.
No, because how does that help the public, you know? How does that serve the public?
We do follow up with the relevant agency to say, hey, did you respond? And we have a good working relationship to follow up and say, we received this comment, please confirm you received it and you're responding. So we do follow up to make sure the individual comment has been addressed or at least been responded to.
And that's great because there is good intentions, but everyone does have a lot of work. So sometimes that might not happen. So sending that follow-up is great to ensure that there was.
Great job, great job.
I do have some questions. So regarding and I am looking with time, it looks like, at least for my, I don't know everyone else's schedule, we'll try to end at 12:30. We could push that back a bit as well. I did give some room. The closeout discussion doesn't need to be 30 minutes, so that's where I see there could be some reduced time for that. And after the session, we could also do a 5-minute break if that does work. Okay, great. So a couple questions. Regarding the updated public participation plan, which now has a new title, would you be able to give a quick summary of what's new, whether that's public outreach efforts, whether that's evaluations, what's new compared to the 2020-18-19 plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I chose to change the name from public participation plan to public engagement plan because when looking at revising our public participation plan, I not just wanted to connect with and learn about what our different departments are doing here and connect with our community partners as well and learn how they're engaging with the material. But I also looked at, what are other MPOs doing? Part of that GARE equity group is finding out best practices. One of the wonderful things that Kyle puts together for us periodically are these APBP. And Kyle, I do not remember the exact names for that acronym. Thank you. So going to those different sessions and learning what they're doing and those MPOs and
Is that national?
Yeah.
that is national. Mm-hmm. And if you get a chance, I genuinely do recommend joining in on some of their sessions. I mean, they have amazing best practices being shared, which is what inspired me to go with a more public-friendly name such as engagement. And I think it also communicates to the public that we don't just want you to be present. We don't just want you to feel as though, again, we're checking that box. We want you to actually be a part of that process. So some of the things that we are doing as part of this updated plan is really incorporating some of that feedback that we've gotten from community members about how to engage with them, video content. Something that, I didn't really mention during our presentation, but this certification period was between 2020 and 2024. We know that people, for the most part, in 2020 to 2021 were locked down. At the end of 21 into 22, we saw people starting to come back out. But during that time, they were almost zoomed out. right? So like, yes, we want to make sure that we have virtual options, and we want to make sure that we have the ability for people to engage with us via, Teams, Zoom, et cetera. But we also want to offer more hybrid options. We want to make sure that we're doing more in-person engagement. People are excited to be back outside, and while we recognize that due to different health limitations or disabilities, not everybody can engage with the public the same way that they used to. We still want to try to meet people where they are and provide a varied avenue of access.
Related to the live streaming of meetings, is there the option for participants who are joining virtually to send real-time comments?
Yes, so
And
we
those to
utilize,
be, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's just related to that, the comments, and then I guess if able to then hear back.
So
and respond.
we utilize YouTube and Facebook to stream our meetings. There's an interactive element where people can submit comments in real time. Admittedly, it's not often that happens, but the option is there.
Okay, great, because I've heard for some streams, there isn't that interactive and that it's.
So we use YouTube and Facebook, and the chat is turned on.
Okay, great. Yeah, just as an update, when the public engagement plan is updated, look back at the Title VI to make that reference, maybe do a hyperlink to that plan. And additionally, I know we didn't get into discussing this in the limited English proficiency section earlier, but related to engaging with those of limited English proficiency, I know you mentioned, I guess when the MPO goes into maybe areas where there is higher rates of limited English, documents they might be translated. I don't know if those translated documents are already available on the MPO's website. I did see from one of the plans, the percentage and the number of individuals in the region that did not speak English well, and what kind of engagement there is with those communities. I was looking at the documents. I don't know if there's a hope to include a tagline for those documents, which are presented in English, but for those who aren't English speaking, to kind of know what the document is, if they are interested, how to, I guess, find a version that could be available and with the resources that HRTPO has. Hearing that the surveys are at least translated into Spanish, like, that's great, that really getting that input from the Hispanic community for that, and maybe, I guess, outside of the surveys, how those population groups are how their transportation needs are being received, and to see that there is that effort.
I would agree. I saw some other MPOs who, as part of their public participation plans, have the first couple pages make reference to or translate some of those core pieces for their general audiences or highest non-English speaking population to be able to connect with that document. So all that to say, yes, I would absolutely be looking to do that with the pen.
Okay, great. And are some of HRTPO's documents, were they translated into Spanish? Were those excerpts from those documents, or was I
So we've been translating the surveys.
Okay, just the surveys for now?
Just the surveys for now, but again, this is something we want to continue and grow in. So if there are any other suggestions for documents that we may want to consider, or if we hear from our partners at the Hispanic Chamber or at the Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce, or from any of our other connections within the community who advocate for, different planning documents, we have, the intention and the desire to translate those documents as well if needed.
And acknowledging it's not a perfect solution, our website is embedded with Google Translate as well. So I know it's not perfect, but hopefully it's at least a good step.
And that's great that the website is. I see some MPOs chose to choose just some languages, but at least with your website, it has the option for, I think, every language that Google has, right?
And our speak cards have over 36 languages. We actually followed VDOT's method and chose the languages not just that are represented within our region, but throughout the Commonwealth.
Chelsea, one thing to add, your good questions about the virtual meetings. One of the things we did during, after COVID is we made the investment for a dedicated 1 gigabyte pipe to our building. You know, as you know, and you even saw last night, right? When you have that many people coming in and everything. So we made that investment, and I think, you know, that's helped us.
That's for internet speed? Okay. Great.
You mentioned that there's a transit stop outside. How often is that run?
The bus,
14, number 14.
yeah, it's around number 14. Ivan, I would need to get that for you, if we can get through that information in terms of that frequency. I think it's fair to say what you heard last night, none of the routes are frequent enough, which is what we're really trying to move forward on, but we can get that information to you.
I'm trying to think about in terms of how does that sync up with, you know, your MPO times of your MPO meetings and various other meetings that perhaps for individuals.
We'll do a bit of a little summary of that for you.
Do you know the history of that stop by any chance? You know, it used to be down the road by the hotel.
Oh man, educate me.
That's right, it used to be down the road, TPO staff can speak to it, but they didn't want a shelter down the road by the hotel. So TPO asked, we'll take the shelter here if you can move it back here, so they moved the stop back here to accommodate them. Oddly, it's used a lot by hotel staff.
I didn't even notice there was a shelter out there, man.
Yeah, so now there's a covered shelter, but
That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
We actually clean it up as part of our Great American Cleanup as well. Yeah, annually, two times.
And I may add, if I can, that's one of 650 shelters that HRTPO is paid for.
Well, that's our tag, huh?
That's
Yeah, and Mr. Rucker, we even installed solar power lights at sticks.
Oh, man, y'all awesome,
That's
man.
that other website feature, it's called Eye in the Sky.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Y'all needed a moment of levity there.
All kidding aside, though, to help our riders, we do have our building staff keep an eye on just keeping that shelter clean as well.
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss to talk about the work that our general services team does. You may have seen them come in and out of here to make sure that we've been supplied with all the things that we need to keep this meeting going, but they really are also the lifeblood of this office, and we wouldn't get any of what we get accomplished without them and their efforts. They keep our outdoor area nice and clean. They actually won an award from the Elizabeth River Project for their efforts on keeping this waterway clean. It's not their responsibility, but they take it on because they have an investment in this community and in the area that we are situated.
Hey, just one more question. In terms of just looking at your compliance reviews, and I noticed it's statewide for all MPOs and PDCs. In terms of complaint procedures, you reference FHWA Title VI Q&A. I just want to make sure, is that what you're referencing when you're talking about complaint procedures?
Yes, that was
Okay.
reference, and that was information that we received from Mary Walker,
Right.
you know, the civil rights manager.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate that. Because, you know, we have some internal discussion and so I'll just say, and I think I captured this in STIP findings, that previously there was, you were following DOT order 1008 for external complaint procedures. And when the new language came out and the request was to follow Federal Highway Title VI, what we observed was, in some cases, or in one instance, the PDC We had the complaint procedure said PDC is not discriminate based on race, color, national origin, sex, age, and disability. But to accommodate the Federal Highway Title VI Q&A, it removes sex, age, and disability from the complaint procedures. And it only reads we shall not discriminate based on sex, age. So that's why I wanted, that drew a little concern, and that's why I'm like.
That was the guidance that we received.
I appreciate that, and that's why I want to know.
Along with, even Civil Rights, Division received that, and so we wanted to make sure that we passed that along to our subrecipients as well. And so those adjustments were made. But it was as a result of guidance that came directly, I think too, as a response to VDOT's complaint procedures. So.
Right. I appreciate that because I think we need to internally have some internal discussion on that.
And we were asking.
Not the federal
highway, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we were asking if there was some adjustments that we needed to do, just let us know,
right.
And we would, pass that along. But right now, that was the latest guidance that we received.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, I know in the presentation, there was reference to Federal Highway Title VI requirements. There are also FTA Title VI requirements. There's a large overlap, but there is the FTA circular related to Title VI. The MPO does receive Section 5303 funds, or those funds are passed through to the transit agency. Transit agency has direct civil rights oversight from FTA, and it's up to subrecipients of VDRPT to ensure that their subrecipients do meet federal compliance for at least the FTA Title VI program. So there are those guidance. The guidance does have the checklist of what to be included. There are, mainly it's overlap. What we've seen in other states is that reference of here's our Title VI and LEP plan. The Title VI plan should make reference to the public participation plan. I know the current plan does have that reference that there is a program. Having that hyperlink or even the plan as an appendix that would help to make that one plan be clear that public participation, the plan is included in the overall Title VI planning document. And that document should then be voted on as one item by the board. So that's something.
Are you saying that our public engagement plan or public participation plan needs to be separate from our Title VI plan?
It doesn't need, they can be separate documents. The Title VI document should reference the public participation plan. So sometimes we've seen, Title VI, LEP, public participation, but I think that would be fine if the updated public engagement plan is referenced as the MPO's public participation plan, having a link then for that plan, and even including it as an appendix, just because sometimes links, not saying they break, but they might not always be updated.
Understood.
Yeah, so it's more procedural where, the elements are there, but according to FTA, how they are included in a centralized document, that is a point that FTA is interested in. Great, so just wanted to comment on that.
When you asked for their schedule, I put it on your desk.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I was trying to see, where's the regional building compared to?
It's one of those stops in between. It's not, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chesapeake General Hospital, Municipal Center, Robert Hall.
Okay, I think we're good for, how is everyone doing? We need a break, should we do a break?
I'm ready to go through. I want to, you have some great programs ahead for discussion, limited time. I'll let you determine what topic areas we should have. I mean, they are great, but
My presentation's like 5 minutes.
Hey.
For resiliency will be a little longer.
Yeah, and you can get those guys.
Okay.
And then Ivan, we do have one area we would like to ask for our planning partners' assistance.
Okay.
Maybe a couple minutes.
Want to Assistant Kevin online in terms of HR Tech, where we are.
Okay. Hey, Kevin.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, I appreciate you. Just, since we're, I guess, on the tail end of Title VI and public involvement, one of the things that we asked VDOT to do following the 2014 matter where the young lady raised an issue was to take a look at HR TAC to determine whether or not HR TAC had procedures or a Title VI plan of implementation, or Title VI program that included complaint procedures. And can you tell us a little bit about where you are with the coordination with VDOT? Or VDOT, can you tell us where you are with the coordination with?
Yeah, I don't mind starting out. It looks like y'all are in the green room while you're setting up for the next presentation. So, and Ivan, thank you so much for asking about that, because I believe we've made great strides since you and I last spoke on this matter. We currently have a Title VI plan and policy, LEP and ADA plan out for public comment right now. Both FHWA and VDOT, Queen, and I apologize for not knowing the person's name from FHWA who's attended several meetings in my office conference room. You know, there's been a lot of synergy that has come together on the articulation of that plan. Quan has been very good to assist us, and he will continue to be our civil rights liaison for the program. As you all know, we have a joint agreement between the MPO, PDC, and HR TAC for sharing of services. So I feel very good at where we are on that, Ivan. We made a lot of progress, you know, thanks to your prodding and asking the right questions. But, you know, under the TIFIA loan process, it was a requirement for us to develop, and engage Title VI, which, you know, gave us kind of a double fold on the envelope just to make sure we seal this up right. Everybody's helped us do that. So we'll be adopting that at our September board meeting, and certainly feel very comfortable to say that I'm very pleased at where we are and where we're going with that.
Hey, Kevin, I appreciate that, because I do know within the implementation language of HR TAC and state code, there is language that speaks to VDOT providing assistance to ensure that HR TAC is properly structured. And so that's why.
That's right. So.
Well, Queen's been there. Queen, you want to follow up?
Yeah, so VDOT, we're very pleased. We've been at the table working through this process, reviewing the documents, providing guidance. So we're very comfortable. In addition to what Kevin said, they were also working with the consultant to update their website as well. So we know all of that information will get integrated in that as well. So from an outreach standpoint, communications, I mean, their program looks very different. And I think the first part was really understanding, where they were, how their program was structured, and VDOT's role. So that took a minute to get there. But right now, we're currently under review. I mean, that's out for public comment, and we're very pleased, kind of where we are in the work that's been done. So we just have a little bit more to do. And, we continue to support their efforts. So
that's awesome.
I know, right?
Yeah,
it's been a long road.
Yeah, thank you for the updates. Good to know that you got a good man in Quan, who was the Title VI liaison for HR TAC. So
yeah, and
Ivan, you got it. Hey, Ivan, you got to be careful when you give me the podium, because I have some other stuff to mention, but I'm going to wait until the end on that. Okay. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
See you in a little bit.
All right.
All right, I guess I'll follow that up then. Do a quick presentation here on some of our performance-based planning and programming and performance management efforts. While Mark brings the slides up. I just wanted to start by saying this is something we've always done here at the TPO well before I was started here 25 years ago, trying to make as many of our processes here as objective and data-driven as possible, so that we make it as fair as possible for everybody. One thing I wanted to mention before getting too deep into this is we do specifically call out performance-based planning and programming as part of our recent CMP report document. Because of the importance of it, we talk about some of the FHWA focus areas, why it's important, and how it incorporates throughout the entire process. So I just wanted to note it that we definitely called that out specifically in the introduction of our CMP report, and we'll do it again here as we update with CMP 2025. Transitioning to the regional performance measures and targets, the federal requirements. Since 2018, since the legislation was passed, we've monitored federal performance measures and targets and set targets here in our region. TTAC is assigned that task, working with HRTPO staff, but TTAC ended up forming a working group. So I work with a working group. We meet at least once a year to talk about the status of the various performance measures and setting targets. They make their recommendations, and we take that to the TTAC for their approval, and then ultimately get approved by the HRTPO board. For safety and the transit ones, that's every year, and then we have the 4-year targets and all of the other areas. We do incorporate this information into the TIP and the LRTP, and I'll mention that toward the end of the presentation. I do want to also mention that we do constantly update the website with the performance measures and targets, so anytime targets get updated, we include that information there along with progress toward achieving those targets. One effort we do every year is what we call our system performance report. We update this on an annual basis. Actually, the draft of the 2024 version will be released here at the end of August. That's nearly complete. But it's designed to meet the reporting requirements that are required for system performance report, the LRTP, but we make sure to update it, like I said, on an annual basis. So we go into detail in terms of each of the methodologies, how we come up with these measures, what are some of the historical trends and on the data. The state obviously sets their targets, so we describe them, and also how those targets were set. And then we get to the regional targets and what, if we match the statewide target, why we did that. If we have our own targets, why we did that. That's all described in there. And then ultimately we talk about the progress toward meeting those established targets, whether we're meeting our targets, whether we're not. Just graphically showing, I forgot to put this in here, just graphically showing you what the report typically looks like. We try to make it as understandable as possible with getting too deep into it. This one is specifically regarding pavement conditions. So you can see on the left, that's the current condition of pavement by interstate and non-interstate NHS, both in our region and Virginia, how they compare. On the right, that's the trends and the targets, and then ultimately on the last page, whether we're meeting those targets on pavement condition for all 4 of our measures, we are surpassing the targets that we had established. Or where we're at in 2023 is on pace to surpass the targets that we have established for the year 2025. As I mentioned, we do incorporate this information into both the LRTP and the TIP. So starting with the LRTP, in the current 2045, there is a section devoted specifically to incorporating this information and the regional performance measures and targets, and goes into detail in terms of at that time what our targets were and how we were being achieved. It does reference the system performance report, so it says for up-to-date information, go to the website or specifically to the system performance reports. But it also highlights how we incorporate all of this. You've heard about the project prioritization process many times during our meeting. I won't go too deep into it, but the 2045 LRTP does go into details in terms of how we incorporate these performance measures and targets into the project prioritization process. I just show a few examples here. For example, for reliability, we transitioned to the federal performance measure, the level of travel time reliability. For freight, we also use travel time reliability, so we wanted to make sure that we incorporated those federal measures into our project prioritization process. Same thing with bridge condition, we incorporate that information in there. For safety, we incorporated actually the SMART scale from Virginia, their process, which is reduction of the equivalent property damage only for serious injuries and fatalities. So we tied in with theirs. But we do try to make those measures as consistent as possible, both with the SMART scale process, since that's ultimately where how funding is determined, or the federal measures, since we're graded on those, obviously, when we look at progress toward achieving targets. We do incorporate them into the TIP as well. These are images from the current 24-27 TIP. Similar to the LRTP, we include the current measures and the targets and a description of them, and point people to the system performance report and the website for updates on that. In the TIP, we do, however, highlight some of the programmatic ways that the TIP will assist in meeting these various targets. John, I don't know if you want to build on that a little bit, but we do definitely highlight that.
I have it pulled up right here. So, for example, Keith already mentioned for RSTP, we utilize the project prioritization tools I mentioned yesterday, and there are components of that tool that touch on all of these areas here that were listed for performance measures. Also, we have the HSIP program in there. We highlighted in our document how the HSIP program, how the tenets of that program address a lot of the safety issues and projects that get selected, how that plays out. And we reference the performance measures website as well, so we lead them just as in the LRTP back to that warehouse of all that information there. It's a lot of great information. But anyway, it's pretty similar to LRTP how we incorporate that into the tip.
And that's everything I have on this topic. If you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I guess just following up, so like on the, in the tip aspect, you talked about like how the tip demonstrates achievement towards the target. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, where it's more of a programmatic approach. It's not like project type, or do you say these projects in the tip are these project types? This is how we are achieving the target.
It's married to the funding for the projects that are in the tip that the HRTPO board has sway over. In other words, they our prioritization processes and project selection processes, how we select those, we incorporate those pieces of the performance-based planning into those selection processes. So in the tip document here, we outline specifically how we do that. For example, we reference SMART scale, and for safety, the safety measures in SMART scale program, how those, so it's not just in the ones we have sway over, but in other selection processes, including HSIP, SMART scale, and others. So we have a number of ways that we do that.
So it's more like the criteria for how those projects are prioritized.
Yeah.
To the performance metric.
Exactly.
Now, in the LRTP, once we have the package of projects that we say are fiscally constrained and we run them back through our tools, then we look at some of those regional measures and try to compare to see how those might impact and help us make sure we're on the right track to these targets.
Yeah, I'll just say, the visualization in your system performance report is very good, very detailed. It's easy to read. I can't remember how many pages it is, but if I was a member of the public, I'd be impressed.
I do have a question on the transit side. So both WADA and Suffolk, they're able to use the transit asset management tack onto the plan and the performance measures, as well as the safety, DRPT safety plan and the safety targets. HRTPO mentioned that they create their own regional transit asset performance measure targets, as well as safety, and there is a blend that's used between the different agencies. I guess you got two transit agencies going off of the tier 2 plan, and they got HRT that needs to set their own plans and targets. So what is the process that HRTPO uses to create their own transit asset management performance targets and then the safety targets?
So we don't recreate the wheel, let me say that first and foremost. We coordinate with HRT every year for their transit asset management and transit safety targets. So we get that information from them along with the performance. So from the previous fiscal year, what the performance is. With Suffolk Transit and WADA, as you mentioned, they're tier 2 agencies, so they've both chosen to use the DRPT statewide plan. So their targets are the same ones that DRPT uses. So we just do a weighted average based on fleet size, for example, buses. So for HRT, we take their weighted average and number of buses, combine it with WADA's number of buses, with Suffolk Transit's number of buses, and just do the weighted average on the targets that way. Same way with safety. We add it across the region for like transit injuries, for example. It's just a sum across all 3 agencies. But in terms of targets, same thing. It's weighted based on mileage for safety, transit miles. But yeah, we just do a weighted average. We don't set our own unique targets by any stretch. We just do a weighted average of the 3 agencies.
Okay, and I guess the weighted average is the total number and not, there could be other factors. numbers. So I just wanted to get clarification on that. Let's say buses, total miles, I guess, driven.
Yeah, there's
and then
different, some of them are revenue miles, if it's buses, you know, it's all different ones, yeah. The safety ones, I know a lot of are based on, I think, is it revenue miles or passenger miles? I can't remember which, but we make sure we do a weighted average, whatever if it requires being summed up, we sum them up. But if it's one that requires an average over the three, we use the total number of miles or buses or whatever the number needs to be and make sure we do a weighted average over the three agencies.
So it's more total, the regional, or is the total amount divided by 3?
I'm sorry?
Divided. How is the weighted average determined? What is that formula? So what's the, I guess, the denominator?
Well, it's going to be weighted over whichever agency. So HRT is our most dominant one. So let's say they have 90% of the mileage or bus miles in our region. So they would, when we do the regional averages or the regional targets, it would be 90% of theirs plus 8% of WADA's plus 2% of Suffolk Transit. So it's just weighted over the size of the agency in terms of the number of miles or the number of buses, whichever makes sense for that particular performance measure. Different performance measures use different categories that you're supposed to.
You'll see on our website the full details of every measure.
Okay.
And the rating and everything's there.
Okay, great.
Regional performance measures website. Looking at it right now. So.
Those are included in the tip as well, each of those measures.
I guess I was wondering about agreements. You all may have touched on this yesterday, but in terms of like agreements for data sharing information, is that contained in the 3C agreement? Is that somewhere else?
It's in our 3C agreement. Yeah, there's a specific article laid out in the 3C agreement regarding data sharing, regarding the performance measures and targets with our transit agencies. Yep. And VDOT as well.
What's the role of the MPO in ensuring that the transit projects meet the transit asset management performance targets and then the safety targets in project selection?
I can tell you about, let me make this bigger for a second. So in the CMAQ RSTP program, we address some of those transit asset management items. I mean, make it big so I can see. So anyway, rolling stock, equipment, service vehicles, infrastructure, and facilities. Part of our CMAQ application specifically lists those items, and we utilize that in our scoring mechanism. In other words, bus shelters, how many are present, how many are being asked for. And so those components are built into the actual application, at least for CMAQ. It's in our tip document. I can give you a page number.
Okay.
The
And I guess
page
for the-
number is 25.
The transit projects that are not funded by, I guess, the highway flex funds?
Not specifically, something that we would have a project selection process over. No.
Okay. And I guess because I'm trying to see what kind of work that the MPO does when they have their desired, I guess, capital improvement projects that they would like programmed down the tip, and how the MPO ensures that those projects go towards meeting the transit asset management performance measures and the safety targets, if there's a similar sort of ranking prioritization with that.
Well, not the one that we do.
Okay. Yeah, the MPO wouldn't be involved with that. That'd be more of the transit agencies?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's their understanding that they are to perform those analysis before it comes to them doing their due diligence.
It's part of their transit asset management plan. They each have their own plans to follow, so that would be a part of that. I can't get into the specifics of that, but that would be, in my opinion, their responsibility, yes.
Okay. Just trying to connect the MPO's own performance, the TAM performance measurement targets, the safety targets, and how the transit projects that, I guess, the transit agencies choose, how to ensure that those projects will go towards meeting those targets. And so right now it sounds like that ensuring of those the project selections from transit to ensure that they go towards meeting the targets is that analysis is done more by the transit agencies themselves.
Because there are some funding sources that we kind of, project selection falls under purview, but those are HRT or WORDA or Suffolk, and that's where their transit asset management planning would be as part of that.
It all feeds into the TIP, of course, but as far as taking a separate look at how they looked at that, that's something that,
They don't summarize that.
that's something that, it's in the UPWP, how a lot of that work is done for all three transit agencies.
In the end, it is the MPO's document, and
Yeah, but we don't make those decisions on how those projects are, selected on their end. I'm only pointing out one of the project selection processes that we manage and how we capture that in the TIP for performance-based management.
okay, thanks for that clarification.
Is that a good thing? You said verification.
The clarification.
Check mark. I know, we're talking about the TIP. We can talk about another product if you want.
We really would love for our team to be able to share some of our resiliency work.
I will have to leave at 1. The bus leaves at 1:50, so.
Got your plans. So resiliency?
That would be Sam, and we have Ben here from our Water Resources Department. Dale. And Dale, I apologize.
Let's see, about 15 minutes? This is 15 minutes? Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, thanks for adding us on to the end. Resiliency is a great topic. It's important to this region. It impacts all of our residents. It impacts both of our agencies, so we're heavily involved in this particular topic as it relates to flooding and sea level rise and its impact on, specifically for the TPO, how it impacts transportation, but the PDC is concerned on how it impacts housing and residents, businesses, and you name it. So this is just a quick overview of the presentation slide. I won't go into that. We'll jump right in. Sea level rise, as you know, is a big issue for this area. Hampton Roads is experiencing the highest rate of relative sea level rise on the East Coast. Not only are sea levels rising, but the land is subsiding, and so the combination of those is greatly impacting the area in terms of impacts of flooding. A lot of our communities have seen flooding. They're experiencing more flooding than ever before, and some areas that haven't seen flooding in the past are starting to experience that, or will soon experience that. We have Ben McFarland in our room today. He's the Chief Resiliency Officer for the PDC. He helps lead a lot of this effort along with Whitney Catchmark at the PDC. They've done a tremendous amount of documents over the years. They've put together a resilience projects dashboard that's interactive for our communities. They've also helped lead our to adopt a regional sea level rise policy. So many of our communities are on board in terms of planning for the future of sea level rise. And you can see what those values are: 1.5 feet for the near term, 3 feet for the medium term, and 4.5 feet for long-term planning. And so we take a lot of the data and a lot of the projections that they do and project that onto the impacts of transportation in the region. As I mentioned, Ben helps lead the Coastal Resiliency Committee, which brings together many of our communities on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. And I myself, I'm the TPO rep that sits on that committee and participates to provide the transportation perspective as a part of that process. This is the work that the TPO has done in this area. Like I said, we've taken the PDC projections and we've looked at several different scenarios for sea level rise and storm surge impacts to our military roadways. That was done back in 2013. And then we thought that it would be a great idea to expand that analysis to do a 3-scenario study that looked at the impacts in terms of flooding vulnerability to our entire roadway system, especially as it relates to our congestion management process. And then how do we interact that or interject that information into our project prioritization tool. And so the work that was done back in 2016 is being heavily used throughout the region. It's something that we want to update, so we're planning to do a revised analysis next year. This is just a snapshot of some of the studies that I've captured. Staff is heavily engaged by different consultants, communities, you name it. We get requested to be a part of, ongoing meetings and opportunities to offer our input as a part of these efforts, joint land use studies, comp plans. I sat on the City of Chesapeake's comp plan study for probably 3 months, and anytime that these topics come up, where they're talking about sea level rise, resiliency impacts to roadways, we always bring up that we've done an analysis of that, and they always request the data. So we provide the shape files and all of the data that was done as a part of this study. And this is just a list of all of those efforts that we've helped out over the years.
Do you think it'd be helpful to have those shape files, I guess, publicly available? Okay, those are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back up from the 2016 study, the staff did recommend that the regional stakeholders consider this when they're doing their planning for their localities and throughout the region, when they're designing and constructing and retrofitting different transportation improvements. And so these are 2 of the success stories that we just put on this slide. The Wythe Creek Road project, widening project, was a project where they elevated the road as a result of accounting for sea level rise in the future. And then on the south side, this 64 high-rise bridge project raised the design of that structure by about 5 feet to account for sea level rise, as well as the movement of ships underneath of that facility. So with that, I'll pass it on to Dale.
Thanks, Sam. I'm sure it's become very clear by now that all of our staff take a lot of pride in our work, and resiliency is no exception. If you recall my last slide from the LRTP deck yesterday had examples of the best practices. Resiliency accounts for a lot of that. We've been asked to present our work at various peer exchanges and conferences. Most recently been just presented to a FHWA virtual resiliency peer exchange. All this work that we're talking about today. So that the data is great, but we want to make sure that we incorporate it into our decision-making process. And so how we do that, specifically when we're developing our long-range transportation plan, we are threading in these resiliency concerns in our scenario planning, prioritization, as Sam mentioned, and having data-driven, objective, comprehensive inputs. And we've been fortunate to be involved in some pilots, which I'll cover, that has given us some great tools. We worked for, gosh, Ben, what was it, like maybe 6 or 7 years with Volpe to develop a resiliency tool that could be used nationally, be hazard agnostic, and be able, to be used by MPOs and DOTs. We had certain objectives going into this partnership. We wanted to be able to model multiple flooding scenarios and again have that objective data-driven measures that we can plug into our prioritization process. So it was a fantastic partnership with Volpe, and they have since released it, and other MPOs and DOTs are using this, they call it the Resilience and Disaster Recovery Tool.
When did those efforts start?
Ben, when did that start with Volpe?
Volpe stuff probably started about a decade ago.
Okay.
But on hiatus for a few years, and then it got back on track.
But it's a fantastic tool, and I'm just going to high level. This tool basically has an exposure analysis piece And then it is married to we can use our travel demand model and to other MPOs and DOTs across the state. It could be anything. It's open source. But it's looking at, what are reductions in lane capacity and detours if roads are flooded or if they're closed altogether. And then it's visual based, so it can produce these example tables on the right in different ways. And one of my favorite ways to look at through these outputs is what they call a regret scenario. If we don't do this project, how much will we regret it? And that's just an easy way for us to communicate to our public and plug into our prioritization process. Sam had mentioned, with Ben's work that we have this regional sea level rise policy. Again, it's great information, great data. We want to incorporate it into our decision-making process. So in our scenarios that I talked about yesterday, we do incorporate those different sea level rise levels in our different scenarios. So in our urban and suburban, since we're looking out to 2050 and we're recommending infrastructure, obviously we want it to live beyond that. So we're using the 3-foot sea level rise for those. For our inland, we're going to the max. So we're saying, okay, what if we have 4.5 feet sea level rise? If we have a 100-year storm surge, how does that disrupt transportation in our communities? So again, we're threading it into our decision-making process. This sort of summarizes that. It's not just one place that we're threading in this resiliency information into our decision-making process. I just talked about scenario planning. We use the Volpe tool to help us identify those candidate projects. Which ones do we think are vulnerable? And how critical are they? Let's make sure we're evaluating those in our process. We talked about inputs to project prioritization. And then when we get to the point of fiscal constraint, again, those most vulnerable and most critical infrastructure and most vulnerable and critical communities, our transportation communities, we need to make sure if we have a limited number of dollars, that those are the projects that were included in the plan. And then more recently, we were able to jump on another pilot with a consultant, and they wanted to build on this work with Volpe, which actually got Volpe to improve their tool. So we benefited in 2 ways. Great resiliency work, but let's thread in equity. And so they were building ways to say, okay, how do we really see how impacted trips, or if they can't make trips due to flooding, how is that really impacting vulnerable communities? So now we've got several tools to choose from to build into our process.
Are those internal tools? Are those also on the website?
The Volpe is the one we're mostly using because it's free. It's available nationally. This one would have to be a paid one. So we were involved in helping develop the tool, but the Fernleaf would be a
I'm thinking for residents, if they're in whatever community they are, road closures, lane reduction in lanes, if they could plan traveling with those conditions.
in real time or in the future.
I'm trying to think with like limited sources, but like, okay, if this road is closed and maybe it's not interactive, these are status maps, but at least having something like that.
Ben, I don't know if you want to talk to the road sensor program.
So we've received a grant, the PDC got a grant from the DoD Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation to install some roadway flooding sensors around the region. This was a recommendation that came out of some of the joint land use studies that Sam has mentioned. And so those are still out there. We have a number of localities that have also put in place similar sensors around the region. And some of that data is available to the public. So we have a public-facing data portal, but also a partnership with Waze that where if there is a report of flooding on the road, so if the sensor detects a certain amount of flooding, it sends an automatic report to Waze, which then pushes that information out to users around the region.
That's great. One last slide, Rob. All you.
Okay. So I think you're familiar with, we've done evacuation analyses for the last, I guess, 25 years. And that's all summarized on our website on about 1 page. Some of our earlier recommendations that were implemented, lane reversal and using all tunnel capacities. And then just more recently, reviewing VDOT's traffic control points document.
And that brings us up to date.
Yeah, I was wondering about like project costs. So like when you all look into plan physically constrained projects, how do you all account for, because like you see like Hampton Ridge Bridge Tunnel is elevated. So like, how did you all plan for that back in long range plan development for the additional costs that it will require?
So with this Volpe tool, we're able to say, okay, maybe even different scopes for a project. If we were to build a project and it's X dollars, but if we want to raise it and it increases the cost, we're able to run it through and see that cost benefit difference and present that information to our decision makers on which one do they want to go forward with.
So how does that line up with, sorry, I missed the discussion about long range plan development, but cost projections for like inflation, et cetera, like, do y'all get that straight from VDOT? Is that all coordinated with VDOT, like what comes out of this tool?
It is coordinated with VDOT and also with our localities, whoever might have submitted the project, and with us. So if we get a cost estimate, first we're looking to say, is it reasonable? Then we work with our district, VDOT district staff. They'll look to say, do we think this cost is reasonable? Do we need to have multiple versions? Like maybe if it's a resiliency, are we gonna have two different, a couple of different scopes or breadths for a project? This is all reviewed. And then when we actually move forward, we might prioritize multiple versions of a project with different costs because it'll result in different scores. And then ultimately our decision makers will pick the one that they think is the best for the region after we analyze across all these scenarios.
But also to your point, a lot of this is just, raising general awareness. We're in coordination with VDOT as well as Ben's Coastal Resiliency Group. We've invited them in. We talked about, potential changes to design guidelines, considerations for sea level rise, that type of thing. And so when they go back to their design engineers and they're, designing these projects, they are now considering that type of information, since we have flooding concerns as a part of their overall project costs. And so once they take it from there and build that into it, yeah, it could inflate it, but to what extent, we don't really have control of that. VDOT runs with it.
I'll just say you all are doing, national leaders in this area. Don't be surprised if we tap you for peer exchanges and presentations.
In terms of reoccurring flooding, still have a lot of communities that experience that based on following a good strong thunderstorm. Is that happening?
Yes.
Is it more frequent now?
Yes.
Not only that, I've been blue sky flooding. More and more, when you spend time with Ben and Whitney, what they've taught me is, just a combination of high tide at the wrong time, and then more and more we're seeing blue sky days, no rainfall, flooding impacts depending on the direction of the wind with the high tide. And as you all know, you all see these on the way home. Doesn't have to be the entire road closed. A half a lane, people start slowing down, could really cause congestion points. But then, we're observing more and more of that.
Yeah, I think, we're starting to get a better understanding of all the different causes of flooding. And I think, one of the areas that our localities are really focusing on right now is stormwater flooding. So there's limited capacity in the stormwater system to actually drain rainwater away when we have a big rain event. And so getting a better handle on what the condition of those systems are and how that impacts travel around the region, that's one of the things that we're working on right now. We don't really have a firm timeline for when that might be available for the TPO to use that, but maybe in the next step, the next version of the LRTP, we might be able to have that kind of data available.
And Greg, would you mind touching very quickly, and Quan's involved with this and Ben's team, but the CPRG, because I think that's a new space that climate pollution reduction program.
Greg, we got about a minute. Okay, I'm gonna go really fast. That's EPA grant. I will put it on fast.
EPA grant, $1 million. We applied for, we got, there was, as part of that, it's greenhouse reduction grant. And what we're looking at is.
Is that through FHWA?
No, it's through EPA.
Oh, okay.
And so essentially what we're doing there is we're looking at where we're getting greenhouse gases from in the region and finding ways to mitigate that. A lot of those, of course, are transportation related. But we have a couple of committees that we've set up. The Water Resources team, Whitney's heading that up, but they've done a lot of work with the CAC, and Juan's been involved with that, with outreach efforts, but also looking at ideas. The CAC just had a survey given to them to say, what could we do to look at Justice 40 communities in terms of how we can, take federal dollars to reduce greenhouse gases in a way that benefits underserved communities. And so we've been really involved in that. It's been a rush effort because the timeline on EPA was short, but we still have another couple of years of this. And so Quan and Matt are helping with the real outreach efforts here, but the focus is let us quantify greenhouse gases in Hampton Road and find ways to reduce them.
Thank you.
Had to get that in.
Yeah, as you mentioned EPA, I can't speak for other federal agencies, but I wonder if there's other sources of funding. Even PUD and environmental justice communities, kind of all prongs, maybe health and human services. But that's great to hear.
This has pulled so many entities together. Like Dale will tell you about the green operator program at the Port of Virginia, right? And so this really brings together transportation with all the other efforts in a really meaningful ways.
I just wanted to check in, and maybe this is me from not being from the region, but regarding resiliency planning, climate change, I guess what's the political landscape on that? It sounds like, I guess, the region with the different localities understand.
We embrace it.
Embrace it.
It is here. We live it. We live with water. And Chelsea, it's a great question because.
And I'm thinking because the board, how many, seven, right? How many municipalities? I don't want to say their views, but in terms of, is it more of a unified understanding? Is there some kind of discussion with?
I'm not saying everybody's in the same place, right? Everybody can be in a different place depending on how it impacts your daily travels. But nobody shies away from it, right? We call it sea level rise. We call it climate change. When we go to the General Assembly, we might call recurrent flooding because we have to speak to a broad statewide group of people. But here in Hampton Roads, it's here, it's now, and we have to address it. And,
I'll say this.
And that's really Ben too. He's done great work.
15 years ago, it was very different, and Ben can give you a whole history on this. But when the largest naval base in the world says, what are we doing about resiliency? It really changes the tune of the whole region to say, this is something we need to address now.
Ben managed the first two joint land use studies, I believe, in the country. They focused on the impact of sea level rise and climate change and the operations of a military base. And you see, get people's attention when those things start to happen.
So, I guess we can have some closing comments. We're gonna hang around.
I guess I will do my closing comments. And if you want to have further discussion, Ivan and Matt will take notes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the TPO staff, PDC members, VDOT, DRPT when they were available. This is a federally required process. The certification review is done once every 4 years. Thank you so much for HRTPO, the organization, the staff for hosting us, for welcoming us, for your hospitality, your reception in being able to support the federal team in carrying out this requirement, from the physical meetings, from the virtual aspect to allow other attendees to join, both for the sessions and for the CAC meeting, the public involvement session. We really appreciate it. Following up, mentioned on day one in the morning that the recertification deadline for the Virginia Beach TMA is November 20th. Prior to that, we will issue a report that includes the findings from the desk review, from the discussions had at the on-site meeting, discussions with the CAC, discussions with the public. That report will include federal findings that can include accommodations of what the MPO is doing well, and as a precedent, recommendations for items that could be improved, and then corrective actions for items that are not meeting those federal requirement, and have a more explicit follow-up and resolution date. So we will be around. In the meantime, probably the draft review for the draft report for factual view would probably come out sometime in the month of October, and allow the staff for the MPO, for the state DOT, for the transit agencies who gratefully that they were able to join us yesterday for all the agencies to review the plans. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to Ivan and myself. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for the great discussion and the great work that the MPO does, the enthusiasm of it, the quality of the work, the engagement, the hope to make process improvements wherever they are, even continual improvements from greater efforts that were done in the past. So really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Chelsea, it was great to meet you, and thank you for all your time, your commitment and conversation. We really appreciate it. And, I know we have to do this once every 4 years, but what we look forward to is just continue working with you all as our federal partners as we move forward. I just wish you safe travels back. And Chelsea's she lives up in Philadelphia. You all know I'm a Pennsylvania guy, so. So you're gonna have to let me know where the best Philly cheesesteak is, Chelsea.
I feel like I can't comment on that because I haven't actually partaken related to onions. They use the same grill. So
okay, I gotcha.
All I know is Pat and Gino's is the tourist favorites.
That's
and
what I
then
hear.
within the locals, there's a couple names that they throw out. Jim's, Cleavers. But I'm sure there's probably some articles and food critics that have debated about that, and they probably have more insight.
Thank you very much, Chelsea.
Thank you so much.
As Chelsea begins to pack up, as mentioned, we're going to remain at the table for a little while. But I just wanted to agree with pretty much everything that Chelsea said with respect to how we view this organization, how we view your staff. As many of you know, I've been at this table since 2000. Kids are growing up, they've gone off to college. Ever since I've arrived here and was seated at the table, I've always thought highly of the team of transportation professionals at this agency. And because we think highly of you, the expectation is that you can do more because of the experience, or expect more for those of us who know more and can do more. And that was always the expectation in terms of from the federal highway standpoint of this team down here. The expectation, we always come with the expectation of Hampton Road is always going to do more because of the team that it has put together. And we value that, we appreciate it. And Bob, I hope you can certainly deliver that to policy board members, how much we respect and value technical experience of your team, your great group of individuals. And thank you for welcoming us into your house again. And we look forward to continue to work with you and to learn and grow and develop and pass along best practices based on what you all are doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I know this is a lot of work for everybody involved, but one thing it does is it sharpens us, right? And I think in our continued quest for improvement is really, thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you
This is
all.
really helpful, that honestly, you've met them all. These are the professionals that make it happen. So I just want to publicly thank them and folks on the screen as well, and others that are doing the work right now. They can't be on the screen. So I just want to thank staff. And Ivan, would we
We can carry on this conversation. We're here. I know you wanted to talk to us about it.
I did, if I may. First off, again, thank you, and I think we've talked about so many important elements over the last, it's been a day, anybody keeping track? But, I think we'd all agree, none more important than issues of civil rights, and issues of equitable treatment, and issues of fairness and inclusiveness. And, as you've seen, we serve 1.8 million people. And you saw when Con showed the maps of our underrepresented populations, and obviously a portion of that 1.8 people are struggling. We have lower income people, we have people that are on very limited incomes. And there's an item I mentioned during our 2020 review at the end, and it didn't end up in the review. And I just feel the responsibility that those people aren't in this room, and I feel the need to try to speak on behalf of them. I'll begin with, and I completely understand, and I want to ask for your help, because I know this isn't something that you're at a level position to do, but I don't know how we fix this without beginning to document it in documents like quadrennial reviews that we have a problem. And you had mentioned the issue of federal funding for transportation is really at a very high level. But the fact of the matter is the President's office has done their job and Congress has done their job to provide the highest level through the IIJA, the highest level of federal transportation funding dollars in any of our careers, Here in Hampton Roads, our residents of all income levels pay an extra gas tax and an extra sales and use tax. And that money right now is being utilized to fund just shy of $6 billion, about $5.8 billion with a B, of transportation improvements.
Through interstate.
They're not on local roads. They are on the interstate network. And when you talk to our neighbors, the expectation is that the interstate network is taken care of by federal funding dollars. And then when you zero in on Hampton Roads, and as Ben noted, we have the largest naval base in the world. We have that utilizes all these interstate highways. And we're so proud to have the military here, Sam. I mean, we collaborate with them all the time. They're so important to us. Yet that's our national security that benefits. When you look at the Port of Virginia, that really supports our national economy east of the Mississippi River, as Barb Nelson would tell you, that's a nationally significant facility that utilizes those roads. Yet 93% of our interstate highway improvements are being paid for by our residents of all income levels, including low income. 7%, fortunately, from our state partners at VDOT with their limited funding, but we have zero federal dollars in these interstate highway programs. Now, have we tried? Yes, we have. And this is where I think I need to ask for your help. Again, President's office, Congress has done their job. They put more money into these federal programs for transportation funding than we've ever seen. But I'm here to submit that the ranking process and the procedure for scoring those is not accurate. It's not working. Twice we've asked for federal money through formal federal applications, grant applications, for the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel project. One time we were ranked the #1 congestion relief project in the country. Another time we were in the top 4 in the country for economic development impact, access and service to our military. Yet because our projects are so big and because our projects cross waters and are very expensive, Both times we were declined. So let's go back and say that a second. You know, we talked to the public. HRBT was denied funding. You know, most people look, yeah, how could that possibly happen? It's happened twice at the federal government. And then it even gets worse. Kevin's on here. We do have some federal money. We have TIFIA loans. What does that mean? We get money from the federal government and we pay it back with interest. The federal government is making money off of us in that regard. So, Ivan, this is you're the messenger on this. This isn't to you or anyone else. But what I would ask is your help in helping embed this issue and problem we have in our review as comments coming from us to our planning partner. And this goes higher than you. But we just have to change the way these projects are ranked and evaluated. And, you know, my partner on here, Kevin Page, are you live on there? Kevin,
I'm just waiting to jump in, Bob, when you're ready.
But anyway, if I could cede to Kevin for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah. Hey, Ivan. Part I think what's stirring me, and you know, it takes a little bit to stir me. What stirred me a little bit is that I was asked by the Volpe Center to engage in the evaluation of the TIFIA loan program. As you know, FHWA, USDOT, Build America Bureau, you know, by golly, you know, y'all been a big piece of this. I want to be very clear, although we had to borrow the money to make these projects happen, you know, we've been one of the largest customers of the TIFIA loan program on the Eastern Seaboard in the past, I'd say since 2020. So where I'm going with this is while I was chatting with the Volpe Center about the Build America Bureau and the administration of the TIFIA loan program, I said, well, what else do you all do? And the colleague on the phone there from Volpe says, oh, well, we are the ones that were tasked by USDOT to develop the benefit cost analysis, which is the pass or fail, Ivan, of whether an application even gets off the desk, is received or not at headquarters. And she says, oh, you know, we've done this. And I said, well, let me tell you something. I said, we've got 1.8 million people down here in Hampton Roads, very diverse population, a lot of blue collar, that in order for us as families, as workers, as vacationers, and those trying to participate in leisure or even the economic or defense assets that are out there, Port of Virginia, Navy base, et cetera, we are punished because our projects are so darn expensive. So in order, as Donnie Tuck, and I appreciate him a lot, Mayor Tuck, and, you know, I really did appreciate him voluntarily just jumping on this morning. One of the things he said publicly, Ivan, and you're very big on this, he said, we as a group of people have been making our decisions to visit family. Because in order for us to visit family, his family, he says, I got to cross the water. And the only way to cross the water is on an interstate. So our improvements have primarily been on the interstate system, but that's a local road to us, Ivan. We have no other alternative except for going way up to Newport News and crossing on the James River Bridge on US 17. That's it. And so that has been what he said in the celebration of the award of the contract for HRBT in that ceremony. He says, we as a people are now going to be reconnected. We will now be able to visit each other without worrying or making those postponements. There's some families I know in Hampton Roads that haven't seen their family for 2 years because of how much the congestion is. But Volpe said, he said, you know, well, the problem is you're at a 3.8, now $3.9 billion project. And although you're asking us for a very de minimis amount of money, we're counting the entire cost of this project in the calculation of the benefit cost. Then we're netting that out, you know, spreading it over the 110,000 whatever cars that go through that tunnel based on the timeline of measurement that they were looking at. Well, Ivan, we're building a 100-year facility, and we're building it primarily at our cost. Kind of see where we're going with this. So what do I tell to all of the people out there that are like along the mindset of where Mayor Tuck is? Wait a minute. well, I've got to use an interstate to cross the road, and I understand that's an interstate, but we're not, we're not seeing the federal government engage that way. So I'm not calling you out on this, Ivan. I'm just making you aware of the situation because I myself have been so plagued in my mind, and it's not in the back of my mind. This is in the front of my mind. I hear you all the time talking about that, and I hear myself endorsing projects as an executive director of HR Tech that move forward with interstate improvements, but that's sometimes the only way we can get people there. So then we followed up, and Mayor Tuck mentioned this today. We started another discussion about a year or so ago about, well, what's next? Ivan, what's next is how we touch Southampton and other very rural areas. They'll never see a dollar of HR tax spent in their territory, but it's called the Primary and Secondary Road Fund. But again, we're going to have to lift it on our own, and we're going to have to get our state legislature to cross that bridge with us and establish that new program. But we are thinking down here. So, but you've had a lot to do with, and I'm not saying this in a wrong way. I'm saying this as a compliment to you. Ivan, you've kind of poked us in our peripheral vision many times, but many times over, what you see coming is from the side. And you've got to react to it. And I think we're reacting to it, but our challenge has been, how do we get this to come together? Now, let's put the icing on the cake, and then I'm going to be quiet now on this, but thanks for the time to listen patiently. On our last application that Bob's team put in, we were dealing with the Hampton Roads Express Lanes Network. We haven't been 100% turned down on it yet, but one of the comments came back from staff analysis was, oh, we went to the constrained long-range transportation plan, which is over there, by the way, at the TPO. And we also looked at where you are at HR Tech on your plan of finance. We, the people applying, are required by the federal government to have a constrained plan in order for a project to advance, period. I don't care what it is. And so in the constraining of that plan, HR Tech had to develop a plan of finance to fully fund the Hampton Roads Express Lanes Network. So Ivan, now that we've had to pledge all of these funds, FHWA came back to us and said, well, in the analysis of your application, it appears that you have a plan of finance that's fully funded. We're not going to even entertain your application enough to even think it's worth funding. So that's a secondary part of all of this, but this just further accumulates and adds to the frustration of where we are in dealing with this. And I don't want to call this a reverse migration of messaging through you back to them, but there's a lot of people out there in Hampton Roads that could benefit from these programs that we're trying to develop, because then that would have freed up funds. Because I will say this to you, Ivan Rucker, when we run out of these interstate projects, we're still going to have the HRTF, and the next highest congestion relief projects are going to be in the primary and secondary road system in the U.S. highways that currently today aren't touched. And that's in any jurisdiction. So anyway, thanks, Ivan, for allowing me the time. Okay.
So just on the HRBT, 3.9, yeah, 3.9 billion, we were asking for 200 million for the Fed, and we asked twice. And like Kevin said, we get screened out of that cost benefit ratio because the project's so high. We're being removed in that initial mathematical screening, correct, Kevin?
Yeah, we're getting kicked out, Ivan, before it even, there's a desk audit of a application received. They run the public benefit on it, and if the cost is greater than, 1 or greater, then it advances to the next stage. We can't get out of that do loop.
So this isn't really a political issue. This is the way the programs are being constructed. And that's where my hope would be. It's going to be a journey, right? But if we can start to identify this as an issue in places like this review, and we would be happy to maybe write that part.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you are part of, can be, or should have been part of our public engagement strategy. Our public participation opportunity is still open, not only for the citizens, also for the HRTPO, the HRPDC. So what I'm hearing your experience, and if that's something that you feel that perhaps you want to communicate to a broader audience within USDOT Federal Highway, I would encourage you to do the public involvement initiative or participation over the opportunity to maybe perhaps put something together. Because I don't think you've done that. At least in terms of as part of our public engagement strategy, communicated that to his formal writing. Perhaps while you're bringing the fire, you bring your water also, meaning we got a problem, here's a recommended solution. And present that in the form of some type of correspondence that maybe perhaps folks in headquarters can take a look at. And they're like, okay, who's the right person that would deal with that or respond to that? And Mac is from our headquarters office in DC. He receives those the certification reviews as well as the public comments. So I would encourage you to sit down with your team and put together a strong public comment, the fire, and the water.
Yeah, thank you. And Mac, myself and I'll volunteer, my friend Kevin will be available after that letter goes up, the ladder to discuss in more detail with any partners.
I think it's needed. So I guess, just like a point of clarification, is it the grant programs that we're talking about?
It's the grant.
All the grant programs?
It's Infra and Mega.
Infra, Raise?
Infra and Mega.
Infra, Mega, and Raise.
Have you all received any?
Yeah, Raise.
So reaching the reconnecting communities?
The state got 25 million for New Kent County for I-64 widening. That was the raise.
None of our applications, even when we're asking for a small piece of
The state application.
We've asked for.
So I want to talk about that 29 miles. It was 3 segments. The most remote segment, which was going to be built last on the timeline and still is, was the center of the 29 miles. So that really the next segment, because the state had pledged through the General Assembly 170 million for our 9 miles, because we were trying to complete, Ivan, you know where we are, it's segment 4, which was up in the very rural area of James City County. We were trying to get that funded, and we didn't need that much, Bob. I can't remember what we asked for, but it didn't get funded. They funded it through the RAISE program, and they assigned it to a project that will be built after the other 2 segments, the one coming to Bottoms Bridge and then ours building west towards New Kent. So again, I'm not griping here. I'm just saying that, fundamentally, I realize there's a mathematical science and a political science. And I can guarantee you that was the political science piece of this. But the mathematical science, that part, I believe you all at the policy level have the ability to take a look at that and tweak it. We were asking for $200 million. We were fronting $3.8 billion. And say, my point to you all is, so what do you rate the benefit cost on? If you do the entire project, we will never, ever, ever in Hampton Roads get past the initial pass-fail test for staff review, because it will never make it. That's just my take on it.
And let me step just a little bit in a very much a collaborative project. So you're all aware, we have had on our legislative agenda for some time now, the need to finish the gap from Hampton Roads to Richmond. So I have spent a lot of time, and thank you to our VDOT partners, because Commissioner Bridge, to Secretary Miller, we spent a lot of weekends helping them write applications, right? So keep this in mind. It's just not Hampton Roads. $750 million to build the gap, $25 million of federal money. Now, Kevin, thank you for your help. We advocated like crazy at the General Assembly, and the first time since I've been in Virginia, we actually saw transportation money pulled out of the general fund to fund the gap. So I guess what I would submit, and the 25 million that we got was for the rural area in New Kent, which will be finished last. So I think overall, Virginia's not winning in this space for competition. But Ivan, I really appreciate that suggestion, and would be pleased to do that. And
Yeah, definitely written correspondence makes our job a lot easier to try to push for the region.
We'll make sure we have the right contact information so it doesn't go in a party box somewhere. You know what I mean?
But anyway, thank you for the opportunity to share and for providing our comments on it.
No. Bob, yeah, absolutely. It was important, and we need to hear that from you. We look forward to strong correspondence from and coordinate with HR Tech.
Well, hey, Ivan, I gotta tell you this. You can pack your bags when you go home today. You and Mac going back to McLean. I think that's where you are. And you can tell any of your colleagues, man, we raked them over the coals for 2 days, and all they complained about was a different program. So, you might feel a little bit good about that, okay? Both of you.
Appreciate you, Ken. Thank you, sir.
We love you, Ivan. You know that.
Hey, man, it's mutual, man.
Mac, I don't know you well enough to say that, but we
It's
appreciate
mutual,
you.
man. I got 20-year history down there, over 20-year history down there, man. Thank you.
I guess I'm just interested in where the federal dollar's going down here.
Not to us, I can guarantee you that. We had a chat with Senator Warner about that. I said, we're controlling over half of VDOT's capital improvement program in the 6-year program. And we were having this conversation, Bob. And Warner went back to Fed and said, well, the designated recipient for the interstate system is VDOT. So, then we quickly realized we were just wasting our time. We couldn't get past the benefit cost. And if the projects were awarded, the funds would go to VDOT for administration and distillation as part of the 64 corridor. So, Mac, that's where we kind of are down here. We have a lot of local regional cash here, and we have the borrowing power to make big projects happen. But also, you've heard, if we can get some federal funds to offset that, we're going to start stepping down into these U.S. highways and other congested areas because these big projects will have been knocked out. So, Mac, that's kind of the message back to you all is I have to constrain for HR TAC to the TPO on these applications to show that we have the wherewithal to fund them. And then they're coming back saying, well, you got the money. Why do you need us? And so.
Well, I'm sorry, Kevin. I think one of the things that we worry about as planners is so we love our port. Our port is awesome. And you heard, we're such great partners with them. They're doing their job. But if you think about the port, it is opened up to the entire world, right? And we have just exponentially, when I was in Richmond, Ivan, I think I was hearing down here, you had ships carrying 8,500 TEUs, right? Now they're 23 to 24,000. Right? When I first got down there, they took me out and showed me one at 17,000 TEUs, and that's like so yesterday, right? But we have all this freight coming in, and it comes down to the funnel, and to answer your question, Mac, I think the port's been really successful at bringing a lot of money to the port, rightfully so. But the problem is we're not investing. We are as a region. That at a state and federal level, the investment in the landside transportation network to move that freight that's coming in, it's a bit of a funnel, and the pipe coming out the other side is what keeps it. So if you think about all the issues you heard us talk about, Sam and Keith about the rail crossings, right? Dale about the congestion that we're seeing. It's great to invest in the port, but we're going to need some complementary investment in that landside transportation network and staying ahead of that game, right, Sam?
Parking, a lot of issues there.
Yeah, so Mac and Ivan, I'm just follow on with that. And this is the value of the freight policy committee, whatever it is that, Bob runs. One of the things that came out of one of those meetings was that we had a presentation from Walmart. And so they sat there and they said, look, all of our, here's what happens to our merchandise that comes in by container. The first 11 days of inventory goes over to Pewsville Road, which is restuffed in Walmart delivery 18-wheelers, 53-foot box, vans. And then from the 12th day on until they finish their, what they call their crate package inventory, goes to James City County, Virginia, through either Monitor Merrimack or HRBT, depending on the height of the truck. So now, this is a key piece of this that I can't get Volpe to understand. Every single Walmart store to Minneapolis, St. Paul, including Sam's, is supplied by those two distribution centers 24/7. That's the reach of what our project improvements landside have been providing to the entire United States. So we hear the Port Authority go, oh, we're the economic engine, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's the private sector friend that's outside the gate that has to get their containers from the Port Authority over to Pewsville or James City County on our improvements and to the out Midwest as far as Minneapolis, St. Paul. My teeth fell out when I saw their distribution map and the reach of where those containers are going from Hampton Roads. It's just amazing.
But it's like, my question was like specifically like NHPP, like, does that go to, that does not, none of that touches the interstate?
We have not been successful with these mega projects. Keep in mind that when you're looking at mega and you're looking at infra, you think about the portfolio of HRTAC of one project being 3.8 billion. Many times there's 800 million available nationwide. The monies have been carved up so much that it's not structured for mega projects is the problem, and neither is that cost benefit ratio. And I think, somehow there's some parts that need to be moved around. But let's be honest, and this tied into your point yesterday, some of it probably is political, because when you look at the awards, how many different states get a little bit, right? And that's nothing any of us in this room can do. But somehow, if we're serious about funding mega projects as a nation, I think we've got to take a look at that. And maybe that's going to need to be some appointed committee with representation, from different geographic regions to come up with a good solution.
I'm wondering, has this come up at AMPO?
I think the one thing I also want to say is NHPP by a smart scale, yes, and that's what Dell was telling me. So yes, there's the smart scale. Again, the cost of our projects is so high just because of the unique topology here. But AMPO, yes, but I think our needs are very different when you compare the rest of, we are part of AMPO, the Virginia Association of MPOs. It's a different scale of projects that we are looking at. 3.9 billion is a very different scale when you look at other projects in the rest of Virginia.
Well, I mentioned AMPO because you got other large TMA areas that probably have similar large billion-dollar projects. And I'm wondering if are they running into the same issue? Is this unique to Hampton Roads?
I think I used to be part of AMPO in my previous job. I think the issue is our region, just because of the water, nature of surrounded by water, and the military and the port just has very different needs, which makes it a little, if you look at Seattle, for example, you can say, there's the port, there's the water, but they don't host the biggest naval base in the world. It's just a very different, but I can look into AMPO and see, but so far our region's very unique in that regard. They'll jump in.
And just like big picture, so with the regional funds, and just to put it like real simply, we're confined that when we're investing in our interstate projects, it has to be projects that have the most congestion for the most number of citizens. So those are our best projects that we're using our regional funds on. These would also be the projects, if we forget about the getting kicked out of the cost benefit, would be most competitive on the national scale. But we're using our regional funds because we have to per our state legislation on our most competitive projects. And what ends up happening is if we could get more federal participation on those most competitive projects, then these other projects that could really change the life of most of our community on these primary and secondary roads, we would free up our own funds to be able to do that and do more and have more effective transportation. And so that's sort of like the big picture is, ultimately having more federal participation really just entirely helps the Hampton Roads region.
Even smart scale for us, many times Virginia's statewide smart scale competition is $400 to $500 million statewide, and our state partners want to do more. They just need more money in the system, right?
Well, on the truck parking, obviously, it's a national issue. We've been working over several years to formally establish a statewide freight advisory to advise the Commonwealth Transportation Board on the funding of freight projects. You are a success story in terms of how you've been able to work with private sector industry, governments to really structure really a fantastic freight transportation advisory committee at the regional level. Perhaps there's something that you can offer statewide committee in terms of how you built your advisory committee to be as successful as it's been. I don't know if you have given a presentation to the statewide freight advisory committee on structure. We're gonna have to, I'll talk, yeah, because that's defined, we put language in there about concerns with, really the movement establishing a fully functional statewide freight advisory.
And the chair of that committee is the vice chair of our tech. So, I mean, we have a good relationship with David White, obviously.
Good man.
Back and forth there. Yeah, but yeah,
you guys good intentions.
I've been to those meetings multiple times and spoken of the Hampton Roads experience and some other topics, more specific.
He also, at the meetings I've attended, he's always shared any of what he's hearing at the statewide committee. He shares with the FTAC, so the other members are aware what's going on. So yeah, there's quite a bit of back and forth.
Yeah, I think if we can move more expeditiously in standing up that freighter, I think there's value in terms of being able to have the concerns at the regional level resonate more effectively at the state level through cooperation with the statewide freight advisory committee, and really bring some attention to, in this case, the concerns about truck parking, and perhaps maybe some recommendations and advice for funding and prioritizing projects related to that to the Commonwealth Transportation Board. But we have a meeting coming up, and I'll present something on that. So I appreciate it.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on something I brought up yesterday, and that was today's are blurring in my head. One of the things you talked about was the funding, RSTP funding for urban areas less than 200,000. Greater and lesser, right? So I think the designation, census designation of Suffolk has had an impact on one of our funding sources, for example. And that's something our board has been concerned, because as we talked about, Suffolk's hosting the 4th largest logistical center in the US. And Suffolk is a very valued member of our TPO board, and we will plan for that. But I think the funding, just something and we might reach out to you on that, Ivan. It's a conversation we would like to have. Like, what can be done to help address? We understand the census designation, urban area boundary designation was done, but they're just these fallouts or follow-ups that's happened. It has had implication on our funding, and that would be something we'd really like to engage with you.
Yeah, and I will put our counterpart in discussion as well, VDOT.
Oh yeah, the VDOT's, well, we've been engaged with VDOT quite a bit on this.
Definitely look forward to discussion and hearing about your experience with the new legislation.
Yeah, the census urban area boundaries.
Census, yes.
Yeah.
Even the disconnect between us as a region saying that is not representative of our urbanized area, and us sending those comments, and it just nothing happening with that. Because if we could have gotten those boundaries updated to truly reflect what is our urban area here, these other problems might not have happened necessarily.
But we've definitely been working with central office, district on this, and they're well aware. They've been very supportive on that.
Yeah, nothing at the state level. I mean, like, we're communicating it, and there seems to be this process, that we either as a region or the state say, we're finding.
Something going on. There may be, I don't know what our headquarters office has been hearing nationwide, but perhaps something might be happening up there. I'm not sure. I'll coordinate with that on that as well. I appreciate you bringing that. Hey, again,
appreciate you listening.
No, thank you.
Any assistance you can provide, that definitely will be providing written comment as part of the process. Thank you.
Hey, Ivan, I got one more.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now that we're in the bus business, HRTPO, Hampton Roads Transit is down 100 drivers. We can't even get our 15-minute service on the street because because of commercial drivers. And this is systemic. I know Chelsea from FTA is gone now, but maybe you can have this conversation with her. I realize very clearly that there's no federal funding that comes down for operations of, street service operations. But is there some way that FTA could find in this next round some type of transitional assistance to incentivize people to want to come to work to drive a bus? It's not a very sought after career. And it's hard to attract and retain commercial drivers when the trucking industry is sucking up most of them as soon as they learn how to drive a bus. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that systemically, because I've chatted with a couple other transit colleagues across the country, I know in preparing for this comment, and it just seems to be systemic, Ivan, and I don't know what the answer is, but I will tell you, if you don't make pullout, you don't become eligible for seat mile credits and service mile credits that obviously go into your availability for an opportunity for funding under the federal formula.
All right, Kevin. Thank you. I will share that with FTA counterparts. And thank you, everyone. Cool.
Very good. Anything else, Ivan?
No, nothing.
All right, well, thank you again, and let us know any additional info. I have a few notes of follow-up items that we need to get you, but we'll certainly get on that.
Okay. Thanks so much, Bob.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you
everyone.
to the team.
Great team.
State partners as well. Thank you so much. Of course, it's ongoing with us, right?